Lockheed was given a extraterrestrial craft from the government. They realized that the alien pilot and the craft are symbiotic, that it's almost one and the same. The United States Special Forces descends on the landing site of the craft. A firefight ensues. The media just went flat. And I think that should bother people more than almost the money that has been spent over 70 years. What a lot of people do not understand in the YouTube community, in the UFO community, researchers and pundits and skeptics, is that I am not only battling the information and trying to get more of it, to make it more comprehensive, to make this more ironclad, like a prosecutor would, trying to put away a defendant. I am also battling the government, and I hope we will get to it, obviously, with the Lockheed story. And once again, my emails have been stolen, the contact names have been wiped from my phone, and I'm battling Hollywood, trying to, as I am trying to hold up to my promise to not take any money from any UFO interested people and fans and YouTubers, and I don't want to be a grifter. I don't want to be labeled a con man or a salesman. I'm into this for 20,000, and to finish this perfectly, I had to go to Hollywood to make this documentary. I money allotted for this investigation is dried up. I'm not saying I'm broke. I'm just, the money has dried up, so I have to sell this to Hollywood. I've been trying to do that for 3.5 years. It's just, I am just getting uh, pillared on every and everywhere I turn. And I don't say that dramatically, have people feel sorry for me. I am just, I have got 5 spinning plates in the air, and this is everything I can do to just complete this and get it out there. So that's what I do.
Okay. Well, we did the alien. It was interview with an alien, but looked more almost like an examination of the alien videotape, where we did a whole video on that
Right,
about 4 months ago or
right.
longer. Yeah,
About 4 months, it seems like. Yeah.
so about 4 or 5 months ago. And since then, there's been like new. Well, since then, you went. I know that I saw you on like the steps of Congress or
Correct.
something. You've gone up there. You've had meetings. You've spoken with people. So what's been happening since then?
Yeah. I don't really think, and this is my fault, Matthew. You and I become good acquaintances, and from the emailing
Right.
back and forth over 4 months. Thank you for keeping in touch with me. I appreciate that very much. That says a lot about your credibility and your character. But I, I'm at fault. I haven't done a good enough job with explaining this enough to people and getting it out enough to people. But I am the first person that brought this officially to Congress on Martin Luther King Day 2023, when I took the entire report and investigation to Congressman Mike Gallagher, who was sponsoring the NDAA amendment, the whistleblower amendment, where whistleblowers could come forward and they could get protection from the government. From the government, as crazy as that sounds. And I got no traction with it. I went to Congressman Andre Carson, sent it to him. I sent this to Senator Rubio, Hillebrand. I had an appointment and flew to Washington, June of 2022, to hand this to Congressman Tim Burchett, who was given the task of organizing a new hearing about this. And then Grush came forward, and I understand he's a colonel or major in the Army, in the Air Force. He was testifying in front of Congress, not dopey Jon Stewart going to the office and handing over the investigation. I get it. And then I said to myself, when Grush came forward with my exact story, minus the names, the facilities, the dates, which I have provided people, my investigation has all of that. I am willing to tell all of that. And I have, in part and parcel, on podcasts, and of course the government, and to People even like reporters from the New York Times. And so when Grush came forward, Matthew, I'm like, oh, this is it. Even my wife was like, you're going to be on the cover of the New York Times. This is what they were telling you. They were waiting. They, reporters around the country, were waiting for an accredited person from the military to come forward to say, we've recovered aliens, we've recovered craft, we've got them, we've, of course, with craft,
What happened?
I don't know. I switched to a different internet. Um, so when Grush came forward, which everyone in the media told me, hey, look, you need to get somebody that's an active or formerly recent active person in the military to come forward to say, we have recovered aliens, we've recovered craft. And they all said, that's never going to happen. And then Grush comes forward. Now, I find it very suspect. Matthew, I hold your opinion a lot higher than most people just because of your life experience. Here is this, semi-retired grandfather from Chicago that's walking around to congressional offices saying, here, this is a report from one of your departments, the DIA, talking about we have a program of acquisition, retention, and interrogation of off-planet beings. We have their craft. Here's the facility. Here's the men were in the room that day. Here's the film. Here's the snapshot. All of a sudden, David Grush shows up. Was he there to? Did he come forward? Was that coincidental? Only month.
Were you think what you think they handed over your report and had him
I think when you're,
like, I mean, to validate it?
I, I'm thinking so to some degree that you have this guy going to congressional offices talking about an alien retention program. He has names, dates, facilities. He has program names. I have the code names for Project Aquarius. I want to repeat that. I have the code name for Project Aquarius that happened out in Papoose Lake, just south of Area 51. I have the clearances, which is Yankee White and Yankee Black. I think that yes, Grush, part and parcel, maybe was prompted or maybe came forward knowing that let's get ahead of the ball to some degree. That is my speculation. I don't know, but I find it strange after 70 years of nothing happening in Congress, all of a sudden, when the dopey fat guy from Chicago starts calling and emailing and actually physically going to congressional offices, just all of a sudden a guy comes forward with the same information. I don't know. I just find that
Right, but
funny.
why would they do that? So they could control the narrative?
Yes, I
So they
absolutely believe that. That's a great. Glad
okay.
I pointed you on the. Not taking away from your intelligence, but you
Yeah.
were right on the money, and the media just went flat, and I think that should bother people more than almost the money that has been spent over 70 years. We are in a constitutional republic. If we don't have the media there as our firewall, as our investigator for the public, we're in trouble here. We as a voting bloc, the citizens, and when they ignored it after David Grush came forward, even almost ignoring David Grush, he was only covered by second tier media to some degree. I mean, this wasn't on Good Morning America the following day as much as people. I went to a wedding in Kansas City, Matthew, where people are like, what do you mean a colonel from the Air Force came forward to Congress? I mean, no one. And these are high powered people, intelligent people, college graduate people, successful people. I mean, this was a power wedding. No one, no one knew that someone from the Air Force testified to Congress about having craft and beings. So that should tell you something. And
W What has happened since then, though?
yeah,
Since all of that happened, it just kinda went flat, right?
I believe that it has, and it has gotten David Grush's biggest fault, and I don't blame him, but he didn't realize this, is that the UFO community and the media wants something. Had he had grabbed a document, which he was never going to do, because he's an honorable intelligence officer that's not going to break the law. But he had grabbed or absconded with one secret document that said, this being is being held at this facility, it would have been game on. But since he came with just secondhand stories, he was, which is typical of YouTube and the media and Twitter X. We put him in a blender and eviscerated this poor son of a bitch. And I'm using bad language on purpose. We just destroyed him because he was giving secondhand information, irregardless that he's an honorably serving, major or colonel in the Air Force. And so after this, that he was eviscerated in the media and on the internet, David Grush. Now people are coming forward to say, no, 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 no. He interviewed me. I have firsthand knowledge. Now Congress is bringing 40 new witnesses to testify. It's game on now. It's game on now. Will there be catastrophic disclosure? I don't know. Catastrophic disclosure meaning a congressman going, aha, look, I know that my video, the video you highlighted on your show, is one of the interviews shown to Congress. And now a month ago, a constitutional lawyer involved in the UFO field named Danny Sheehan, went to Harvard. He is now talking about that he has been told of a second interview that was in the 60s run by the Air Force that it was leaked out, and that this interview is now going to surface also. So we have now two alien interviews that are being batted around, that are in the lexicon of Congress, of the media, of the internet. And I mentioned the internet and YouTube and Twitter because they are also people, pundits, casual observers, podcasters are driving the narrative too. And I've been trying to be one of those people that is trying to steer the narrative and the group as a whole away from devouring each other like a subculture often does, fighting amongst each other and kind of getting on the same page, because it's us against the government, not where it's us against us. And it's turned into a freaking dumpster fire the past 3 or 4 or 5 months on YouTube. And off, I'm back. I can see you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry. Okay. It was my touch-up filter. I just turned it off. So
okay.
that's what it said. Turn off your touch-up filter. It's causing the freeze up. So I did it.
Oh, okay. So what's going on? So, all right, you were saying,
So, the problem right now is getting all interested parties other than the government on the same page, as far as, not infighting, not devouring on our own. We're, devouring our own, and not changing the narrative of, we are a dumpster fire. We, the internet community, the UFO interested parties, podcasters, pundits, you name it. So I've been at least trying to do my part to at least, try and um, keep bringing information forward, but also trying to raise the bar as far as um, how we're talking to each other and communicate, because the government, who is also likes to mix the pot with the internet, must be laughing their ass off, because we're like, this is, again, I said, it's turned into a dumpster fire on the internet and YouTube and Twitter and whatnot, and it's been awful.
well, well, what is the plan as far as Congress? Because it seemed like a lot of the congressmen were taking the testimony very seriously. So, bringing in 40 more people, okay, so what? Like, well, you bring in 40 more people. Like, I mean, how many people are they going to line up before they say, hey, let's go ahead and look into this and actually, are there crafts? Are there actual bodies? Are there live aliens? Where are they? And let's get some clarity and, and actually, I guess, be honest with the American citizens, and not some guy saying, "Oh, I saw them," but the president or you know whatever congressman coming forward and saying, "Okay, here's what's going on. Here's where they are. Here's what happened. Here's the history behind it. Here were the issues, and look, look, they there were programs designed to lie to the American public for your own good. Here's what our fear was, but at this point, I think that the American citizens are are at a place that they can accept it, something like that, and then explaining and maybe showing photographs or explaining where these locations are or whatever's going on. Like, when is that, as opposed to, well, we've got 40 more people, man, nobody gives a shit about your 40 more people. When are we moving forward? Like, that's not moving forward.
Are people listening to this man to my left? Or
I mean,
you are so on the money that it's almost like I wrote these questions and out for you. Matthew, thank you. It is the scene, Matt, in A Few Good Men, where they want to call all 273 Marines from Guantanamo Bay to testify that they weren't in the room when the instructions were given. And somebody stands up and says, look, please the court, we realize that all 273 Marines are going to testify like this person,
right.
and so I've been saying the same thing, Matthew, that you have, and people have eviscerated me for it. You're going to bring 40 other people who are going to also give, who are not going to have slides, microscopic slides of alien tissue. No one's going to have a piece of a craft. No one's going to have a secret document that, when producing it, is going to be illegal. No one's going to have any evidence, in my opinion, of these 40 people. Some of them might have firsthand stories, and that might be interesting. But you know, I can have a firsthand story of King Kong Bundy or Hulk Hogan in my wrestling days. So, I
Yeah.
mean, do I got video? Do I have something? Do I have an affidavit written out? I mean, so I agree with you. I don't find that that's going to feel much and do much. And Congress is already shrinking in forming a jellyfish spine on demanding that we bar the doors and we go at this full force. They want to take the eminent domain clause out of it, which I think they already have, which meant Congress has the ability to go to any contractor like Lockheed, Raytheon, Battelle, and say, we want to see what's ever in your facility. You have a government contract. You are now under eminent domain. We want to see every single facility, every satellite facility. We want to see everything that you have. Same thing goes for going to Area 51. These Congress people are going to military bases, Matthew, and they're being turned away. They're being treated like dirt from these base commanders. So eminent domain, which would stop all of that, has been taken out of the legislation. So what do we have? It's the same story, just a different day. Isolationism, protectionism. I got to get another 2 years in Congress. I got to save my ass. There are some heroes like Rubio and Tim Burchett, which, I have a personal problem with Tim Burchett regarding me, but I have credibility enough to recognize Tim Burchett is doing a fantastic job with keeping the narrative. But you can see the wind is out of his sails. He's almost like giving up, like this is ridiculous. And so,
You feel like they're putting up roadblocks to stop
oh
any
God,
progress. So,
yes,
I have a question. You
yeah,
mentioned Lockheed Martin, right?
yeah,
And I know you had told me that story. We discussed that story, which I'm sure we're going to get into. And it's funny, when you mentioned it, I talked to my wife. I mentioned it to my wife, and she was like, "Why would they have their own? Why would Lockheed have their own squad or unit to investigate these things, or be a first response team, or for whatever reason?" And I went, I thought about that for a second, and I went, they're exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. They're
right,
exempt from governmental oversight. Like,
right,
you can have a private security company, and you don't have to abide by anything that Congress says. You don't have to abide by any requests for information. So that's, you know what I'm saying? So I was thinking,
yes,
that's actually perfect. It's it's the perfect reason to have to run private security through a large, trusted companies and competent companies
yes,
that work closely with the government, that are in a very real way almost a branch of the government. Um, So I could see. So when you said that at first, I thought, well, that doesn't really make sense. And then I mentioned it to my wife, and then she said that the same thing. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. And I went, why would you? And I thought, there's only one reason. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not about saving money,
Please.
right? So,
It's
or
ingenious. And
sorry,
I have to be as honest every time, every second of the day as I can with this, because therein lies my credibility. It's ingenious what the government did. Take all of this hyper secret stuff and give it to corporations. It hides forever because you can't FOIA a corporation. Think about
right.
it. I mean, it's ingenious. Now in '47, with the Roswell material, according to Colonel Corso, who headed the team to figure out what some of these implements were that they found at the crash site, a laser pen, a headset, a head actually set. Um, uh, he lenses over the eyes that were night vision, some sort of a Kevlar material for the flight suit. They gave this to corporations because the military wasn't up to speed. We had a foreign materials division at Wright Field, but it wasn't anywhere that could disseminate and digest this information and then apply it into the American society and into technology. So they gave it to corporations. And then once the Freedom of Information Act was passed, I believe that was Bill Clinton, then all of a sudden was, well, these are private companies. Let's keep feeding them stuff because this is how we're going to hide it. Other than a super secret base, 10 levels below the ground where you're hiding craft or biological materials or actual bodies in some type of storage. Most of this material, from what I have been told by multiple people, lies with private contractors, so nobody can get it.
Have you ever heard of a Dulcea base?
Dulce, yeah, yeah.
Dulce base? Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. What is? Do you know what that is? Or
Well, it's I have not. I've only seen handwritten notes from a secondhand story. I do have an intelligence person that claims that it is real. There are things going on there allegedly that are so bizarre that I don't even I shy away from even talking about it. Some sort of a alien human joint technology base
on these
of
super deep
monstrous.
military, yeah,
Yeah,
these really deep military bases,
yeah.
right? That are
Experiments of going out of monstrous proportions that I don't even want to broach to some degree. But yes, I mean I've had a couple of people and one very credible intelligence source said tell me that the base is real, and it's not so much that it's deep in the ground; it's also in the Dulce Plateau, the Mesa Plateau, and then it also goes down into I think six or seven levels. A lot of conjecture, a lot of
yeah,
weirdness. When
yeah,
you
yeah.
when people start telling you Matthew about a base and this and that, and then over the course of 10, 15 years, you hear weird stories from the people around the base. It does make you scratch your head and raise an eyebrow and say, you know, maybe where there's smoke, there's fire. But
Well, I
allegedly, Dolce
interviewed,
is real.
yeah, I interviewed a guy that brought it up, and these, this subject definitely attracts some weirdos. So, some odd people. Not that he's an odd person. He's very he just believes all the every conspiracy out there from
Yeah,
one to another.
right,
But
right.
he was talking about it, and of course, to him everything's 100% legitimate because there was somebody published a paper on the internet, so it's got to be real.
Yeah,
So,
right.
but super interesting guy and genuine guy, and I'm not trying to discredit him or anything, but we definitely had a conversation about it. I'd never heard anything about it,
Yeah,
but that let's like we broached the subject of the Lockheed Martin. What and they have a special, like a first response team, but it's like a military team, right? To go out to, what is it, crash sites? Is it,
yeah.
what is it exactly?
Well,
And how did
without
you
jump,
hear about this?
yeah. So let me. Not a long story, believe it or not.
Okay.
I have done about 30 to 35 podcasts, folks. I am not on social media, which um, is part of my uh, way of dealing with the public of they're all trying to make money on this and they're trying to sell something and like and clicks and subscribe. Nothing wrong with that. I just don't do that because I
Right.
want to keep my investigation pure. So people which they still call me a grifter and con because there are people out there that are just, they
There's
hate
just
for no reason.
yeah, they're just
I'm
assholes
I
out
am
there in general.
$20,000 of my own money into this investigation, folks. So if you want to go start typing in grifter or salesman, I don't know what you think I'm selling, but I'm 20
You're
grand
not very good
into
at it.
this.
If that's what
I,
you're doing, you're
exactly. Thank
failing
you.
miserably.
Thank you. So after every podcast, I simply tell people my email address. If you have, and I say, if you have something pertinent to my investigation, or you see something that I should investigate, or anything, please email me. And the podcast host or myself gives out my email. I've done this 35 times. I've gotten crazy stories. I've got some very interesting stories from military people, from scientists, from a scientist from the DARPA program, a Navy psychiatrist. I've gotten all kinds of bizarre, crazy, heart wrenching stories from people that feel that I am a safe haven to some degree. I don't know. I that's all I can figure. And so on December 3rd, I get an email and I read it on December 4th because the YouTubers want me to be so specific. So I will. God bless you. So on December 4th, I read an email. Dear Mr. Stewart, I saw you on a podcast and was very impressed, or I liked what you had to say, blah, blah, blah. I was a former Marine. I worked for Lockheed. I now work for a private defense, and then the DIA, which Matthew, if you remember from the last time, they run the alien retention and interview program, and they have since the early 60s. They took it over from the CIA and the Air Force. He said, and then after Lockheed, I worked for Battelle, and I'm like, I don't even know what this Battelle. I don't even know what this is. I don't even know if I'm saying it right at this right now. And he said, but I work at the satellite office in Seattle, not the main one, which is weird. Liars don't give you pinpoint information, Matthew. You are a reformed, you're set it yourself con man. So if anytime you want to step into this story, I think it's crazy. So you take the floor if you think,
Well,
wait a
I have
minute,
the
this
list.
is a con. Okay. So he tells me he works now at the satellite office of Battelle in Seattle, not the main office. I'm like, I've known a lot of liars in the car business, pro wrestling, politics, low-level mob guys in Chicago. They don't give out real detailed specifics. It's all real topical information. So he says, look, was talk amongst my colleagues and colleagues that have firsthand knowledge, or however he worded it, that back in the 60s, Lockheed was given a extraterrestrial craft from the government. Okay. We've heard this story before. I didn't
Right.
find that crazy. I've heard this from multiple people over the course of 20 years. Dr. Stephen Greer is a Lockheed. He is the Lockheed expert as far as people from the citizenry. And he has told the story a million times that Lockheed got this alien craft and then in the early 70s produced what they called a flux liner, a very crude looking alien craft called a alien reproduction craft, uh, AVR, alien ARV, sorry. Very crude looking. They called it like a flux liner. It used anti-gravitics. It was actually shown to military brass at at like an air show behind a curtain in a hangar. There were three of them. Very crude. Whatever. And he said, but here's how interesting it gets. That Lockheed eventually, okay, found out how to crack the code, cracked, how to finally get to the next level with this actual alien craft that they were in possession since the 60s. And they basically figured out how to reproduce an almost identical alien extraterrestrial vehicle, almost part and parcel identical to the one from the 60s that they were given from the government. Here's the rub. We call this in pro wrestling kayfabe, which means You obfuscate, you lie, you use misdirection. They didn't tell the United States government that they made this breakthrough on their reproduced craft. Now, a guy that is, I have ran for Congress twice. I am a strict constitutionalist. When you get funding from the government and you get a craft from the government and you're getting um, contracts from the government, and now you subvert the government for your own sinister means to advance your corporation, I have a sincere problem with that. So when I read that in the
So,
email, Matthew, I
wait,
went,
wait a
go
minute.
ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
are you suggesting that a military contractor would mislead the government or the public?
I
I
know,
mean,
shocking.
I
I
don't know
know.
where you get off, buddy.
I know. I've got a lot of balls to intimate that. Wow.
It's so outrageous, but let's go with
And
it for now.
yeah, right. I love the sarcasm. I'm the same way. So now I stand up in my seat. I'm like, He said, and I want to tell you a story. Again, this is office talk, but the men that told this to me, you know, I trust them like I trust, my family. I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Right.
I put these emails on Reddit because people thought I made them up, emailed them to me, and then wrote myself questions and then answered the questions. And anyway, so he says in 2004, Lockheed was flying this alien reproduction vehicle, not an extraterrestrial craft. Their perfect modern version of an extraterrestrial craft. They were flying it in northern Nevada, just outside of a mining town called Luning, Nevada. He didn't say this. I found this out from an intelligence source, and I'll tell that story. He said it went down, but and so Lockheed had a strike team that would go recover downed aircraft, downed airplanes, downed helicopters. I mean, that is not crazy. If you have an aerospace company and you're doing experimental things, my father was a squadron troubleshooter mechanic in the Navy in the 50s and 60s. He said, of course we would have teams in Jeeps and whatnot that would go out and look for and pinpoint a down craft, and sometimes you wouldn't find it. And anyways, so that wasn't crazy because I knew that was smart business to have a team to go looking for something that went down. However, when Lockheed's strike recovery team, which appears to be private contractors, private mercenaries who carried guns and had military garb and military weapons grade military type helicopters, they came across the landing
It's
of this
not
alien.
like that. It's not like that's gonna be difficult for fucking Lockheed to get a
No,
hold of.
no,
They're
no.
making
And
their own shit. So
see, this is why you're a good podcaster.
right.
Exactly. People are like, this is of course they
How
have their
would
own.
they have
They have their own
helicopters?
army.
Yeah.
Right. They
How
have
would
their
they
own
get the
planes.
military
Right.
stuff?
Their own
Jeez.
planes, their own helicopters. They have their own radar system, their own airports, their own runways.
Right.
So the strike team from Lockheed descends on the craft that is downed. I won't say it crashed. Because I don't know. They descend on the alien reproduction vehicle that was owned by Lockheed in the northern Nevada desert. When basically at the same time, here comes JSOC, Joint Special Forces Operation Command, with their UFO recovery team. Why? Because NORAD and JSOC were tracking this UFO from the Lockheed installation in California. I'm told don't give the city, so I won't. I'm good about my sources. They were tracking this craft thinking it was an actual extraterrestrial craft because Lockheed, I'm getting hyperbolic, sorry, because Lockheed never told them we've got this perfect alien reproduction vehicle and we're going to fly it. They just went and flew it. So here is NORAD, and dispatching JSOC, Joint Operations Command, to say, look, we've got an unknown UAP. It just crashed in the northern Nevada desert. They get dispatched from whether it be Kirkland Air Force Base, Area 51. I don't know this information. JSOC, the United States Special Forces, descends on the landing site of the craft as Lockheed is there or descending also. They don't know about each other, okay? And a firefight, according to this email, folks, a firefight ensues. And in the end, two JSOC soldiers, airmen, whatever you want to call them, special forces soldiers, are killed. There is other information what happened to these two men I will not go into because it goes off into crazy land and it's really derogatory and demeaning. And we don't know the true story yet. And I don't want their families to have this knowledge. But two JSOC soldiers of Asian descent were killed in this firefight, allegedly, according to this story. And I write back, I'm like, this is crazy. Now he emails some more emails to me. I see that he is emailing this story to UFO journalist, Australian journalist Ross Coulthard, who I respect. I have a tremendous amount of respect for that I think has been a light in the cacophony of UFO noise. And I see Ross Coulthard writing this guy back saying, can't confirm it, but I have heard sources tell me that this event happened. So Matthew, I am home going, oh my God. Oh my God.
So
Like,
this guy doesn't realize you're on the link?
no.
Oh, okay.
He
Okay.
doesn't realize that he emailed me the Ross Coulthard email in it.
Oh,
Does that
okay.
make,
Oh,
yeah,
so when you follow the thread, you can see that. Okay.
right. He's emailing me. In one of the emails he emailed me, Ross Coulthard's thread email was on the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Again,
Okay.
just like my alien interview, folks, I found out who my main leaker was because of a human error. A first name was put on the email. So,
Right.
um, so now I write him back and I'm like, this is really explosive stuff. I don't know if I'm the guy you should be telling this to. And he then tells me, look, the way what I really want to talk to you about is in your alien investigation interview, you said that there were telepaths in this Project Aquarius interrogating the aliens. And if I said, yes, they are. He goes, it would be a tremendous help to me in my investigation if you can tell me anything about them. I'm like, I'm like, why? Now I'm thinking I'm getting played a little bit. It's somebody from the intelligence community, and I'll get into that. So he says, well, here is the deal. The way Lockheed finally jumped the bar and finally crossed over into mimicking uh, an alien craft was that they realized that the alien pilot and the craft are symbiotic, that it's almost one and the same. Now, I didn't hang up. I didn't hang up. He was emailing me. I didn't ghost this guy because I'm sorry. This is a theme that I have heard before in the past 20 years where one person says that the skin of the craft is almost like the surface of the craft is almost like skin. It's translucent. It's like a mother of pearl. It's almost like it is alive. It's biologic. Another Harvard professor hypothesizes that the being piloting a craft in hyperspace and in the cosmos would have to be symbiotic with its craft and the headset that they wear. And this person tells me in the email that Lockheed realized that if they used telepathy, they would make the leap in creating and mimicking an alien craft. And he said they absolutely did. And I want to know were maybe your telepathic program in the alien interview used by Lockheed also? And so I'm like, hey, I'm going to play along. I said, look, here's the monastery that two of these telepaths came from that were highly in tune with the beings. I'm not going to tell you their names. I'm not going to show. I have a picture of one. I'm not going to show you a picture, but here's the facility. And they did. Many people said that the telepath program with being alien extraterrestrials was a joke. That they were one level above 1-800 psychics. But I've heard from multiple people that there were two or three highly intuitive telepaths that were very successful in getting and transmitting information to the government from extraterrestrials. And I told him that brief story. And after I told him that story, he was gone. That was it. He ghosted me. Now, if I might just say one thing before I stop. People have said, well, he ghosted Jon Stewart. He's obviously fake. So I have to tell people I have a degree in psychology. I have about 1,000 hours of continuing education clinic in the field of psychology. I have interviewed ad nauseum experts and whistleblowers, psychiatrists, psychologists, FBI, former FBI agents, and police officers who have attended the Reed School of Lie Detection. All of this information, they have all told me the same redundant thing about whistleblowers. There's stages. First, there's the trigger event, Matthew. They're mad at their employer and they want revenge or they want to get some information out because they're upset something happened, the trigger event, which he obviously must have had with somebody from Lockheed. Then there's the purge event where they find somebody other than their employer because they don't want to get fired. They find a reporter, an underling, somebody at the second level, me, who maybe could get their information out without any reprisal against them. Does that make sense? You
Yeah.
get the information out. I'm not going to get fired. The third phase of a whistleblower in coming forward with documents or email, the third phase is the caveat, which he says, this is water cooler talk. So that's like, hey, don't get me in too much trouble. This could just be conjecture. They're now getting a little nervous. They're kind of wondering maybe should they have said is what they said. That's the caveat stage. And the fourth phase of a whistleblower is the blow off, which is the regret stage. And they break contact with the person they told this information to, never to make contact again, hoping this goes away. As sick as it sounds, it is very common with the stages of a serial murder. Trigger event, the planning, you attack the victim. There's there's the keeping of a piece of the victim, whether it's a biological material or a piece of jewelry or a driver's license. Then there's the regret stage and then the cooling off stage. And then for whistleblowers, the cooling off stage is all now being ghosted. So he followed, according to all the experts, the typical steps of a whistleblower. And I do believe that he did work for the government. People have laughed at me. It's because of the nature, the vernacular, the wording, and the format of his email. If I may explain before I stop, when a pro wrestler emails me from the past, I know exactly when it's a wrestler. Hey, brother. Hey, Johnny. They use my wrestling name.
Yeah.
There's all caps. There's misspellings. When a corporate person from the corporate world emails me, I know exactly how it is. It's very formal. It's the coding on the bottom. Do not disseminate this email. Disclaimer. When somebody from Hollywood, there's an actual language in Hollywood. It's pivot, circle back, reframe this, or circle around. I mean, you could tell a Hollywood person email in 40 seconds. And for 5 years, I have read a multitude of government people's emails sent to me, and his followed the same format: polite. They give compliments, no misspellings, and the biggest thing is they use abbreviations because government people have all of these anachronisms and all of these names and nomenclature, and the only way they can keep their sanity is to abbreviate them. I've seen this from military people, Congress people. I've seen it from people in intelligence, subcontractors. It's the same damn. So people on YouTube laughed at me like, "Well, how does he know what a government email?" I know how a government person speaks and writes. So, and then I followed him up, and I saw this man who went by Michael L. on LinkedIn. He's of Asian descent, younger man. What did he put on that he worked for DIA and he worked for Lockheed on LinkedIn? So he's obviously got a LinkedIn account. He's obviously a real person. And that to right now is the story of the Lockheed. Do I believe it? I 30% that there was a recovery team, and I'll let you ask any questions, and I will tell you my follow up investigation of it. But I think it's a crazy story that maybe I believe 30%.
It's kind of reminds me. Well, there's several things. So one, the telepath, or let's say reading your mind or something, reminds me of the movie Firefox. It was a book, Firefox.
I know
Did
the
you ever
movie,
see?
Clint
Yeah, yeah, the
Eastwood,
movie. Yeah, yeah, it
and
was a
he
great
has
movie.
to think in Russian to
Yeah, yeah,
communicate with them. Yeah,
yeah. It's great. Where the United States for once is so concerned about a Soviet technology, the Soviet technology they've created this plane with such advanced technology that the U.S. actually slips into the testing facility for the aircraft, and they steal the Firefox aircraft and escape with it. Like, it was so great because for once it was us being kind of like we're doing something super underhanded
Right.
instead of the Soviets doing it. And of
Right.
course it was the Cold War, which I love the
I do
idea of
too.
the
When he
evil
was in
empire.
Russia in the subway in the streets
Oh,
of Russia, I'm like, oh my God, I am never
listen,
going to Russia. It
the whole
terrified
movie,
me.
that whole movie was great. It
Yeah,
was great.
I agree.
So that reminded me of that. But the other thing what reminds me is of the Lockheed strike team, which is so much better than a unit. 'Cause I was saying their military unit. But so their strike team, what I like about that is that reminds me of God. And I want to say this is in the 50s or 60s. Maybe it was the 70s. Anyway, there was supposedly there was an issue there was a conflict between Green Berets and aliens, where there's this story that's gone around where there was actually kind of like a scuffle or a battle
Yeah.
between aliens and Green Berets, and they get
At the
into a fire.
Dulce base. At the Dulce
Right,
base.
and they get into a firefight and end up
Right.
killing a bunch of
Right.
aliens, and so yeah, so it reminds me of that in a way.
Mhm.
But listen, the Lockheed story in general, that's a great story, bro. I mean, listen, even
I agree.
whether it's true or not, let's put that aside. The idea that the all of the intricacies and how it's just a fluke that they steal the technology, they have their own craft, they have their own crew of recovery guys in case the craft goes down, and then they're discovered by accident because they're being tracked by NORAD or whoever's tracking them,
Right.
and they think they've got an alien. It is alien technology, so it's perfect that they would track them, and then they send their
Exactly.
own guys, and then they have this battle because nobody knows who anybody is.
Right.
What a great boy! That'd make
Yeah.
it really make a great. It wouldn't be a whole. It could maybe be one of those Black Mirror episodes. They
Right.
could do something with that. Anyway, so I do love that.
Yeah.
That's a great, and
Yeah. There's
that
a
is
lot of
all of
dramatics
that,
in
by
it.
the way, is believable. Like, there's so much reality involved in that. So much realistic things that it's completely believable, as
Well,
opposed to
yeah.
some of the stories you hear, which are just like, come on, man, stop. That's just
Yeah.
outrageous.
I mean, the government has had its own UFO, UAP crash teams since the 50s. I can name them.
Right.
First of all, the project was called Pounce. The recovery teams were STAR, STAAR. This is in an email in 1999 from a major who was a director of Project Aquarius down at S4, and said, Project STAR was our recovery team in the 50s. Um, and so having a specialized team. So here is the follow-up information, which I think you and your viewers should find. Again, folks, I think this story is crazy. Please, I'm just I've come up with a new definition of who I am in the UFO world with the alien interview and this. I'm just a play-by-play guy. I am telling you what's going on. I don't know for sure. I hope people can appreciate that even with the alien interview investigation and all the money I've spent in 5 years, I still tell people I'm not sure. I still don't know the whole truth. And I hope people appreciate that. However, um, so here come the skeptics and here come the haters. So, other than Jon Stewart's fat, he has crazy eyes. He's Italian. He's a car salesman. Uh, we, when we get past that, it's, well, JSOC didn't operate in the United States. Okay, maybe that's true. They only operated around the world, not in the domestic United States. And I'm sitting back going, oh, okay. I never said they did.
Right.
Now comes, now
And
comes Michael.
the CIA has never had an operation in the United
Never,
States, ever,
never,
ever.
God,
You
never.
believe that you'll believe they're dosing people with LSD
No,
in prisons.
that
They're
never
just
happened.
like in
We didn't
American
inject
like
people in Tuskegee with syphilis. It never
I mean,
happened.
right, you believe all of these things have come out over the years that they've admitted, yeah, that was a low point. all in the
Right.
United States. But the first thing
Right.
people say, "Oh, CIA, they can't even, they're
Mm,
not even allowed to operate." And
right.
you know how many fucking things they've done in the United States they've already
It,
admitted to?
it's comical. It's comical,
Yeah.
including the JFK hit. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm sitting back going, I don't know anything about JSOC. Okay, say whatever you want to say. Now it's beautiful. You know, when you have haters and they go down in flames. Now Michael Herrera, a Marine, who claims to have seen, and he believes an alien reproduction vehicle come down with mercenaries and the United States government soldiers around it, offloading material crates, packaging human beings, and loading on bags, money, drugs, whatever he claims. Okay, his story is incredible. I've communicated with him after he came forward on my story. He comes forward and goes, who are these people that said JSOC doesn't operate in America? He's like, JSOC operates in the United States of America. Take it to the bank. And they have several different bases that they operate out of. He goes further to recover UFO craft that come down. Now, wait a minute. Now, about 5 days later, I'm telling you, Matthew, like it was choreographed by the government. About 5 or 10 days later, the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times runs a story where the CIA says, "Yeah, we've recovered craft, and we have 10 of them." I mean, like, so people are like, crawling back into their hater hole, going, "Oh, I guess the United States does have special forces that operate in the United States." Now, wait a minute. Now another guy comes forward. Never heard of this guy. A tech guru from France, living in Senegal, now living in British Columbia, a high tech businessman. He comes forward and says, "Look, I saw this guy Jon Stewart. I saw that interview from a different angle, but with more people in the room. Like I saw that being that day, but there was more people and the camera was pulled back." And I'm like, holy shit. Because we have proof that there was a VHS camera in the alien interview amongst the 16 millimeter government issued camera. I'm watching the interview and I'm like, I don't believe this. This guy is backing up what I've been saying for 5 years. Then he goes, "There's something else about Jon Stewart I want to talk about." I'm like, oh God, somebody from my fraternity days at Memphis State. Wait, somebody in my fraternity days really dropped a bomb. No, I'm kidding. He goes, "Look, he's out with this Lockheed story. I just want to tell people that I did contract work for Lockheed in 2006. Very important you listen to that date." He said multiple employees off the record would tell me, and he's using his kind of muddled English from France. He's like that. He said some of these Lockheed employees said to him, "This guy that doesn't know me, folks." He said, "You know that Lockheed, we have our own alien craft, and there was a shootout, not a firefight." He uses shootout in his language. He's like, there was a shootout a few years ago. So he's being told this in '06. I was told this happened in '04. So a few years ago, obviously jives with that. And they said a few years ago, and the Lockheed and the government had a shootout. Now, an intelligence community member emails me and says, this wasn't the only interaction between Lockheed and the government. There were a couple of other that maybe didn't get this far, but were as confrontational. Now I go to my two trusted intelligence community sources. One of them who will talk about literally anything that I ask him, the Florida Marlins to, to the golf game, to the Kentucky Derby. I ask him this question. He's, "Mom, I don't want to talk about it." I'm like, "You don't want to, you tell me everything. What do you mean you want to talk?" He said, "I don't want to talk about it." And my stomach got a little like, I'm like, this is a little weird. Now I call another intelligence source, very trusted, never lied to me. Everything he's ever said in 2 or 3 years have been right on the money. I said, do you have any information about this crazy story from '04 between Lockheed and JSOC? A pause. I'm like, oh, this is good. He's like, well, I really don't want to talk about it. I'm like, oh, come on. He's like, I'll just tell you that it's true. And John, this is him. It got really bad. I'm like, what the what? Like, this is true. You know, when you have these, when an intelligence member feels comfortable with you, they are we call it in Italian cacarones, for these guys to be mum and one to downright say nothing to me and the other one just to say it was true and it got bad. What does that mean? What does it mean it got bad? Does it just mean that two people died? Does it mean what else I know about what happened to those two soldiers?
Or does it
Crazy.
mean that something afterward happened that was much,
Exactly.
much, maybe the fallout was much, much worse that
Correct.
nobody knows about? Maybe
No, no.
he may be thinking, something that happened in Congress or something with the military, or
Right.
who knows what the fallout from
That's
all of
right.
that was.
That's right. So I'm going to tell your listeners and viewers, Matthew, I have proven that the man that emailed me these emails is a, a person. He did work for Lockheed. He does work for Battelle. He did work for the DIA. I've got his picture. I have shown his email to everyone on Reddit that wants to read it to make sure that I didn't create it. I put up $3,000 for anybody to prove that I sent that email or knew the person that sent it. I absolutely categorically do not, still don't know that person that sent it, didn't concoct the story. And I also want to tell you my follow-up, to remember what these two intelligence people told me, that it's true and it got bad. And this French tech person being told by Lockheed employees that there was a shootout in 2004, and that JSOC did operate inside the United States. So crazy, crazy, crazy story. I would like to go to the town. The crash site where it went down is 20 miles. Oh, I don't want to get, boy, I almost destroyed myself there. I know the location of the alleged crash. I know the town in northern Nevada. I would like to go there, talk to the townspeople, talk to anybody around. See, I want to know because I asked my brother-in-law, who's a corporate pilot. He's like, John, we could get FAA tapes of that day, of that entire day in that area. Was there twin rotor crafts? Was JSOC communicating with FAA? My brother-in-law gave me how a corporation could fly a craft without really notifying anyone. It's called a round robin, and you do basically a flight following, and all like a Lockheed remanufactured UFO would be experimental 2271, experimental 197. That's all that would show up on the FAA screen was Lockheed communicating, yes, we have an experimental aircraft, and that's it. And they do a round robin. They have 4 waypoints, and they go to each waypoint, and the FAA doesn't know anything. So, do I want to go get the tapes? Do I want to go any deeper with this story? I'm in enough trouble as it is with the alien interview. I think I've done my due diligence a lot further than I should have with trying to prove and trying to flame out the haters, and just a crazy story, and it just adds to the pot of craziness that is surrounding this whole phenomenon. I certainly hope that I didn't cause more disinformation or more confusion with people. But certainly, if we have a corporation acting as their own sovereign country, subverting the United States government and the Constitution, I'm sorry, I ran for Congress. I have a problem with that.
Right. Um, so what else has gone on? Has anybody reached out to you? I mean, like I said, I know I saw you had gone to DC, right? To Washington. So what was it? What happened with that?
Nothing. Congress is not giving me the official designation of whistleblower or recognition. However, Matthew, is innocuous as this sounds. I know that by going to a congressional office, by calling a congressperson, by having their aides call me, I am on record, which I think you know where I'm getting at. This is really what I wanted to do, that if anything should ever happen, which I don't think it will, because I'm not investigating stolen money or I'm not getting anyone in trouble. This is a phenomenon that's been out for 80 years. So, but that at least I am on record officially of coming forward, bringing light onto my investigation, rather than disseminating it and putting it out onto the internet and not getting any official. I call it being time stamped. somebody wanted to do something with me, screw with me, which they have been electronically, I have the proof to tell the FBI, my local police, to Congress, hey, I came forward. Here I was at this congressman's office. Here I was at the Capitol. Here I was on the steps of the Rayburn building holding a press conference. They can't, it makes that you're hiding in public, so to speak. So,
Right.
but my Congressman, Brad Schneider, has it gave me 2 aides where we went over the whole story before David Grush came, and now I am going back to them to have a meeting. I just called them last week because there's new stories in the Jon Stewart life, which is right after this Lockheed emails fiasco. My read but not deleted emails get swiped for the second time, and for the second time, Apple Corporation did another deep forensic dive in my phone, and the director was standing over the woman that was doing the forensic dive. And I heard the director tell the woman to tell me, I have never seen, this is Apple, a director from Apple in their forensic audit department, if that's a thing. I have never seen 4 different email platforms lose its email. She said, Mr. Stewart, AOL's had problems with emails disappearing. I know that. She said, but for you to lose emails on your iPhone from iCloud, Gmail, and 2 separate AOL accounts, you heard my director above me, Mr. Stewart. This has never happened. I'm not lying, folks. So I went to the police department of my village. I made a police report. I told the cop the 10-minute story. He's like, I don't think you're crazy at all. If this is what you're investigating and this is what happened, and this is what Apple told you, I'd be coming to me also. He then told me, take this incident number and I want you to file an FBI report, which I did. And so then 5 days later, I look at my phone and I see, folks, I have proof of this also. So anybody that ever wants to challenge me on if you think these are stories to hype up my documentary, they're not. I look on my phone, Matthew, and all I see are phone numbers with maybe one name out of 20 numbers in my call log. I'm like, what the? Wait, what? I go in my contacts. There's one name out of 50 names that are in my contacts. Everything else is a number. I'm like, son of a bitch. They just swiped my contacts. Now I call Apple again. Now I upload to iCloud like everyone once every 3 or 4 days. So I ask Apple, what do you mean I can't get the contact names back? You have them on iCloud. She said, we don't have them in iCloud. Whatever, because I re-downloaded my iCloud and they didn't come back. I said, and her name is Marsh. I remember her name. I have the Apple ID code case number. I said, what's going on here? She's like, Mr. Stewart, you or somebody had to erase the names on each of those contacts for that to disappear. You can't erase it out of iCloud, or iCloud can't erase it. You or someone has to erase it. So I go to my Russian hacker guy. That's what I call him. He's a computer tech guy in Chicago. Says the same thing he told me 2 years ago when this happened with the emails. He said, John, you know what I told you? The two G's could have only done this. God, and you know what the other G is. I'm like, the government. He said, exactly. And he told me about the Pegasus software, which is an Israeli software sold to foreign governments to monitor people's cell phones. And I, like an idiot, did press a series of numbers on a text message like a fool. And soon after that, that is when this happened. Now, wait a minute. Now I'm like, okay, so I'm a businessman. I mean, I have lost everyone's phone number. All I have are numbers for 2 weeks, and I'm still getting made fun of this. My life was, who is this? Who when somebody texts me, who is this? Who is this? Matthew, I'm telling you the truth, and I can prove what I'm about to tell you. I get a text on Tuesday morning, January, let's say 12th. Holy shit, dude. Just think if you would have campaigned, you would have came in first. I don't have people's numbers, folks. I'm like, who is this? And he's like, didn't you read the newspaper? I'm like, wait, who is this? And what the F are you talking about? He's like, John, it's Justin from the Libertarian Party in Chicago. I'm like, oh, what do you mean? What's going on? He's like, you came in second in the Iowa straw poll for president of the United States for the Libertarian Party. I'm like, what? He's like, dude, I'm not. I'm like, Justin, I've been having a rough week. My emails got stolen. My contacts are missing. He's like, John, you are in second place in the Iowa straw poll that they took for the Libertarian Party for president of the United States. I'm like, that's impossible. Now, 2 years ago, because I was pissed at The Rock and Jesse Ventura for teasing I might run, and if I ran, I would be president. And I was so pissed. I said, I'm gonna put my name down officially as running for president. I'll be the first pro wrestler in history to officially do that. Did that, and I did. I went to the Federal Election Commission. I got a campaign number. I registered for running for president. Thousands of people do it each year, folks. Don't be impressed. But I'm the first pro wrestler ever. I then 2 weeks later said, I'm not going to take this seriously. I wrote them. I got a withdrawal email, a withdrawal timestamp, and catalog number. You are officially have withdrawn your campaign, Citizens for Jon Stewart, for running for president of the United States for the Libertarian Party. It was 2 years ago. Now I'm on this list. I come in second for president of the United States nomination for the Libertarian Party. And so I'm telling one of my intelligence people, and he's doing it doesn't it seem like you're being propelled somewhere? Like he's like, oh, how did you get on the list? And I'm like, that's a good question. So I call the Iowa Secretary of State, and he's like, well, you're on. We get the list generated from the Federal Election Commission. I'm like, look, I have a time stamped where I withdrew. I backed out of this race 2 years ago. He goes, John, I'm just telling you what we did. We got the federal election list, and that's what we put on. And you came in second place. So I call the Federal Election Commission. They're like, no, you're active. I'm like, ma'am, I have a timestamp. She's like, well, I understand that. She's like, Matt, are you listening to me? You're that. Jump in. She said,
Mm-hmm.
well, at any time, did you ever go back on the website and reactivate yourself? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I
Right.
didn't. Maybe somebody else did, but I didn't. And folks, you can laugh at me. This actually happened. First of all, I don't know how it happened. I have the timestamp of the withdrawing. I have the Federal Election Commission in Washington D.C. telling me somebody had to have reactivated you. What is going on here? What are they trying? And I'm not putting myself like, oh, I'm the the Manchurian candidate, or I mean, come on. I'm just saying, like, what I've heard is the government, the intelligence community loves to fuck with people
Right.
who are researching stuff that they don't want you to research. And all they're trying to do is make you batshit crazy. And it's working. I want to tell you one last thing, Matthew. This is going to sound like it's a joke. I'm deer hunting. And two former CIA employees, because the man was very high up in the CIA, own a microbrewery. This is not a start of a joke. It's deer hunting season. And my cousins are like, oh, you got to meet my cousin John. He's into aliens. He's doing a documentary. So the man who was very high up in the CIA, nicest guy in the world, he's in his bar. He's drinking. I catch him off guard. Now, remember, Department of Naval Intelligence is on the bottom of the alien interview, which officially doesn't exist. I catch him off guard. I said, can I just ask you a real quick question? I know you're busy. You've got a big crowded bar. Is the Department of Naval Intelligence real? Remember, folks, this is what Bob Lazar said paid him. This was the DNI on the bottom of the film. You can't find it. You can't Google it. I said, I want to be specific. I am not talking about the Office of Naval Intelligence. He goes, I know what you're talking about. I said, the Department of Naval Intelligence. He goes, it's like an interagency. Yes, it exists. Matt, I'm going to look you straight in the eye because you're the lie detection person. I'm going to look you straight in the eye. He puts his head down. He has his fingertips pointed like a this. He's looking down at his hands. He's like, will you excuse me for a minute? He goes into his back office for 15 minutes. And my cousin and I are looking at each other. We're like, did he just realize he made a mistake? Because that is very delicate subject, the DNI. Is he dropping a dime on us? Is he torturing himself or hitting himself or, being caught off guard? It was very weird. He came out like 15 minutes later and I'm watching him sit down. I'm like, is everything okay? He's like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's fine. And I just dropped it. So here's the kicker. His wife, who was in linguistics in the CIA, is being the most ignorant skeptic as far as there's no life anywhere in the universe. Can you imagine this educated CIA person telling me this? There's no life. You're bumba crazy. I'm just trying to give her every argument and so on and so forth, and almost to the point where I want to throw her through a plate glass window. That's how mad she made me, how ignorant her skepticism was. We're walking out. She follows me out. Now I tell her the whole thing about my emails. Not the emails that happened in December, because this was November. The emails from 2022 that were stolen. And I'm like, it's DARPA, it's the DIA, blah, blah, blah. And she's just listening to me. This is my right hand to God, and this is on my children. She grabs me by the elbow, like she's, escorting me, and she pulls me towards the concrete and she says, forget about DARPA and the DIA. You need to look at the NSA. If anyone's taking your emails, it's them. And I looked down at her. I said, well, you're the third person that's told me that. She's like, because that's because it's true. She goes, look, if you're ever in Washington, you make sure you look up my husband and I. And she walked away and she turned back around like this to look at me. And I don't know how any more of a moment you have of a revelatory, like, holy shit, this is what's going on. And a CIA agent, just former CIA person, just told me who most likely is stealing my emails. Let me follow it up with this. Now I get an email, Mr. Stewart, heard your story, so on and so forth about your emails, and I get, this is most likely what has happened to you. It is my opinion that the NSA is the culprit of infiltrating your iPhone using the um, the spy software called Centipede Stingray. And I don't want you to be alarmed. This is something that they do use in law enforcement. They do need a warrant for, he said, and it does sometimes catch drug dealers, people wanted by the federal government, wiretaps politicians. He said, but I don't want to worry you. It's most of the time for people like yourself, and it did make me feel better. It is simply for counterintelligence. They simply want to know what you know, what is the update. And I am almost positive that hearing you, because they monitor all the podcasts. I've been told this by 20 people, that the Lockheed story certainly tripped off some kind of alarm bells, and it reignited an interest in you, your emails, and what was going on with your phone. And so that was the follow-up of this. And I just ask people, I ask any skeptic of your viewers, if I'm just some fat retired ex-pro wrestler from Chicago, a hapless doting grandfather who's lost aimlessly on this alien interview, why is all this happening to me? And I have proof this all happened to me. I just want to know, why is it happening to me? I know, Matt, I'm sure you can probably start to suspect why it is. Why is it? What have I uncovered? What am I looking at that bothers them so much for them to actually get a warrant to look at my phone? Why is Apple telling me this? The FOIA department of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and his name was Andrew. There's a name, folks. Mr. Stewart, I've never seen someone's file removed from their name on our computer. You can't get your name on this computer FOIA request without a file. What does that mean? Well, that means somebody came in here and took it off. I've never seen this. I mean, why is this happening? Why? So if it's all bullocks, it's all bullshit. There are no aliens. There are no recovery programs. Why are they, cursively looking at, a semi-retired grandfather from Chicago? It doesn't make sense
Right.
to me, other than the fact that we must have kind of kicked the wrong wire and opened the wrong door, and people don't like it.
Right. Um, yeah, I hear you. Okay. I mean, I obviously I don't have the answer.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, I think I know the answer. I just can't definitively prove the answer. But yeah, it sounds like, they're telling you to go fully retired and stop asking questions.
That's right.
Um, well, listen, you know what? Do you have anything else you want to discuss
Yeah,
or?
I just want to wrap up very briefly. I think this will take me 3 or 4 minutes about the alien interview. Folks, it's been incredible the last 4 months since Matthew and I have spoken, and I just want to just briefly go over. So, 1996, a government biologist comes forward to a second tier video production company, says, I've got a 3-minute video of an underground facility of an interrogation of an extraterrestrial. I started investigating this in 2019. A contact from the DIA sends me an alleged internal investigation memo about the theft of this film. And so I just want to talk about some things that has happened that you'll see in this documentary. The facility that this whistleblower named Victor says the interview program takes place in, we have proven this facility exists south of Area 51 with a government FOIA request. It was built by the CIA back in the late 50s as a biological retainment facility, underground biological retainment facility. It was then passed over to the Air Force, who then let the DIA operate inside of it, and the DIA operating with the Department of Naval Intelligence. So the facility that this whistleblower, this hoax tape, says the interview program takes place, we have a FOIA document saying the facility is real. It was built in the 60s. It's called S2 Alpha Site 2. The building is called S2 Annex. So I've proven the facility. Number 2, the film. We have proven that it's 16 millimeter film. Hollywood didn't shoot in 16 millimeter film in 1996 if this was a hoax, but the government did in 1991, where we are told this video exists. The guy from National Geographic that did the Patterson Bigfoot film analysis said, look, every foam doll that was ever made since the 50s have creases under its armpit. Everyone, it happens in the foam of the foam drying process. The arms come down, it creates a crease. He's like, John, I can't tell you if this is real or not, but your alien, for the first time in 50 years, does not have those creases. That was not a foam animatronic doll. I can tell you that for a fact. Okay, wow. We have some of the names in the list, Matthew, that I did not tell you or your viewers have snuck out onto the internet. This bullshit list that people said, oh, Jon Stewart's got former pro wrestlers on there. It can't be any. Oh, the list some of the names get leaked out. One of the names watching this alien interview was a former DIA director, a captain of naval intelligence back in 91. Another one was a rear admiral back in 91 who was with Colin Powell in the Oval Office as his intelligence briefing. We then identified the number 27 that's emblazoned on the bottom of the film as the security designation Yankee White, which means only people that has contact with the president can view this film or view any material with the number 27 on it. So we have the Rear Admiral. We have him in the Oval Office briefing George H. Bush with Colin Powell. Hence, that's why the number 27 is on the bottom of that film, because George Bush was going to be briefed by it because a briefing person is on the list in that room. Number 3, Victor. We gave his face to 4 podcasters because everyone said it's Bob Dean, the UFO person that was famous in the 90s and the 2000s. And 4 podcasters have all said it's not Bob Dean. This government whistleblower, because he has a beard and he looks like a stock car racer in the 70s in the South. I am not lying to you. If he had a truck driver hat on, he could be on an ESPN broadcast from the 70s. He looks like a real dork that thinks he's cool. If that makes sense, like he'd be at a bar in California. Hey, yeah. We feel that he had either a liver disease or kidney disease, why he had the back scratcher in the second documentary. We feel he had seborrheic dermatitis, which is a condition that when your liver and kidneys are breaking down, it causes tremendous itching. And this is why he had a back scratcher when he said he was dying in 2008. We have proven that, for the most part, that Project Aquarius, the alien interview program, sits under the umbrella project called Project Aquarius, which is all things contact of extraterrestrials and Homo sapiens sapiens. How did I prove this? I have the counterintelligence agent of Project Aquarius in the late 80s verifying it. I have Sergeant Michael Munoz, who popped out of nowhere, who was part of Project Aquarius, and at this government S2 facility. We have an email from the project manager in 1999, a Major Tom Mack, saying Project Icarus is real. I was the project manager. We have a photograph of this major at Area 51 in 1979 from his son. He was a beloved figure out there. And we have a century that we have proved is his real name, who came forward and said, I was a guard at S2, S4, and I conspired with the biologist and a couple of other people to get this material out. The bombshell. We also found Joseph Yeager, which it says in this DIA report, Joseph Yeager was kind of the mastermind of getting this cohort of disgruntled people together to steal material from S4, whether that be documents or film. We had so many false hits with Joseph Yeager. We had 5 people we thought was him, what's not. We have finally found Joseph Yeager. He was a State Department employee in the 1950s. We have his picture. We have somebody that was at his house. He lived in Oceanside, California. He was the master manipulator, which helped Victor go to Rocket Pictures after he helped or planned the smuggling of this film. We think that he conspired with Major Thomas Mack to at least look the other way. I don't want to say Thomas Mack committed treason or anything like that, because he was an upstanding and beloved person. So everything in this document from the DIA, I have basically proved. And folks, I want to say this because I said this 5 years ago and I said it 4 months ago on Matthew's program. It is almost 30 years. Not one person with any credible evidence that an investigator, a police officer, FBI agent, a UFO investigator, not one piece of credible, tangible evidence that this film is fake has ever come forward. You can't whistle past the graveyard on that fact, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that the animatronic person that allegedly made one of the best animatronic dolls ever back in 96 has never come forward. Not his wife or not her husband. Nobody on the production staff of that 3-minute film, the general that was in the general outfit, the medics, they've never come forward. The person that provided craft catering, the accounting, the soundstage, no one has ever come forward to say that 3-minute video was a hoax. That has never happened in the annals of ufology. Every film that is a legitimate hoax, somebody eventually came forward, except for Skinny Bob, except for the gray aliens on the tarmac of the alleged Holloman. It's called the picnic, the kids' picnic, and the Victor Alien film. And I just want to say one last thing: the Skinny Bob film, which was put through a program to look like it was a hoax, has the same timestamp coding on the bottom of the film as the Victor film. This is a routine modus operandi of government audio visualization to put a timestamp and an owner's signature on the bottom of every documented event. It's on the Skinny Bob, and it is on the bottom of the Victor film. And the bottom of the Victor film says DNI/27, meaning this interview session was run by the Department of Naval Intelligence. And if you don't have a 27 Yankee white clearance, you can't watch it. I don't know what else. I have run out of things to investigate. So that's where we are.
Hey, I really appreciate you guys watching. But listen, what I'm going to do is we're going to play Jon's first interview about the alien interview. We're going to play that now so you can watch that entire interview and see what you think. And so if some of the stuff we're talking about doesn't quite make sense, it will now.
Since 1955, how many retired senior citizen men and women sitting on their porch in Iowa or Montana in their flannel shirt with nothing to win or nothing to lose, years from death, look in the camera and say, I picked up recovered craft. I saw the bodies. I put a body in a crate. What I had been told by 2 different people was you didn't have to mentally ask the being the question. You would sit down as a telepath, and in your mind, for lack of a better word, you would get, yes, I know you want to talk about the object that's in the Indian Ocean. We are no longer sitting on top of the food chain, that these beings are on top of the food chain. You know, they're the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, and we're the deer. They're extracting semen and ova from human beings like we do to animals. Sometimes the capture and tagging goes well. Sometimes it doesn't go well.
And then, of course, in the last 10 years, there are so many examples of just blatant lies by the government.
And it said, I am been commanded by someone higher than my CO to cease and desist all contact with you. I am asking you, you are not to cut, crop, share this text message. You are no longer to contact me. You are now on a special government watch list due to your frequent and the nature of your FOIA requests, your overseas emails, and the nature of your questionnaire that you submitted to the National Air and Space Intelligence Center.
Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I'm here with Jon Stewart. He is a former candidate for governor of Illinois, and he ran for Senate. He's also the premier investigator of the, and I believe it is the 97 alien interview. Super interesting interview. So check it out. My buddy, who is a big believer in aliens, alien abductions, it really any conspiracy at all, he loves. And the problem is, since the advent of the internet, and let's say the last 15 years, is that growing up, you would hear these conspiracies, and of course, you shrug them off, or even if there's a lot of evidence, you still pretty
Right.
much shrug them off, because why would the government lie to us? And then, of course, in the last 10 years, there are so many examples of just blatant lies by the government. No, we would never spy on American citizens. There is no spy program. 6 months later, a year later, there is a spy program. We are spying on
We would
American
never
citizens.
kill or, put habeas corpus on the side, and Obama, sends a Hellfire missile into a US citizen's car in the Middle East.
Right.
No
Yeah.
jury, no read him his or no Miranda rights, no, trial by his peers, just, and then kill his son 2 weeks later. American
r-
citizens. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so my problem with that is that, like, growing up, I love a good alien abduction story. I loved Fire in the Sky.
Yeah.
I love the concept. I love the idea of it. I love the idea of Star Trek, right? I love, obviously, those are great, but deep down, I was always like, come on, stop it. And I would say, look, I would do the whole, semi mocking, like, come on, where are the pictures? Where are this? Where's that? But the problem is, as things have progressed, there are so many of these what were crazy conspiracy theories that are being debunked, that it's at the point where it's like, I'm still kind of like, where are the photos, where are the videos? But
Right.
the problem is that I also think that the availability for the government to suppress these things is just massive. So, and anyway, you know, I don't know. I do like the idea of it. I just really would love to see concrete evidence. I don't know that we'll ever get that, but my understanding is you've done a
If you
thorough,
wanna see photos, let's rock and roll.
right.
What is this?
I
Look at his mouth
Yeah,
open, his mouth closed. I mean, so they're out there. You have to look. I say one thing. I give the best wrap up on what you just said. I think I've worked at it since 1955. How many retired senior citizen men and women sitting on their porch in Iowa or Montana in their flannel shirt with nothing to win or nothing to lose, years from death, look in the camera and say, I picked up recovered craft. I saw the bodies. I put a body in a crate. I flew the bodies to Fort Worth Air Base.
right.
I worked at Wright Pat. I saw a bean. I, Bill Uhouse, a Marine. I designed the simulator, an extraterrestrial simulator to train U.S. pilots. Who worked alongside me was J-Rod, an extraterrestrial biological entity. This guy smoking his Marlboros with his flannel shirt on. And how many of the 800 men and women who have come forward, again, kind, salt of the earth people, to tell you this is real and they're covering up? How many more people does it take? I don't know. Frankly, I'm exasperated, uh, you know, uh, but I think we finally have seen light poke through that disclosure tunnel. Certainly yesterday with David Grush's and Congress's testimony and hearings, where we wanted to get to the bottom of aliens and UFOs, and about 20 times it was said, Congresswoman, I will tell you that in private. Congressman, I can tell you that, but only in a skiff room. Congressman, I'll tell you that, but off camera. Just this whole thing continues to mock our loyalty and belittle our citizenship, and I really mean that. And I'm not a anti-government guy. I'm not an anti-military guy, but the people are getting fed up.
So let's go back a little bit. What is
Sure.
your background?
You know, I,
Where were you
grew,
born?
sure. Grew up in Chicago, born in 1967, 70s kid. I tell everybody that Chicago television completely made me, a little goofy and a little crazy. We had a kid's show where a guy, molded clay and the clay mound talked. I watching Dick the Bruiser pro wrestling on Sundays and Captain Kangaroo, a guy that came on with the Dictators jacket on, watching Evil Knievel, stock car racing. I mean, it was just a TV totally changed my perception and view of life. I was a college football player for University of Memphis. I left that to become a professional wrestler at 19, still in college. I was a professional wrestler on and off for 20 years. My biggest mainstay was on ESPN for the AWA. Many of my matches are on YouTube. Wrestled everybody, and my biggest rivalry was Sergeant Slaughter. And that was a great time. And got out of wrestling and started in the family car business. I had an automobile dealership, and in between all of that, got married, three lovely children, still married, and ran for Congress in '99. Ran for Illinois governor in 2016, and then it was a replacement candidate for the Libertarian Party for Illinois Secretary of State, which I had no intention of running anymore. And that was last year. And I did run for Senate. And then the Illinois Republican Party said I needed $5 million. This was to go against Barack Obama. And they told Chicago Bears football coach Mike Ditka, you need 5 million. Jon Stewart needs 5 million, or don't even think about running. And six weeks later, they pick Alan Keyes, who was a crazy man, to fill the vacancy to run as a candidate. And that's when I left, became a libertarian. And in 2019, Matthew, when I had my first time off, that wasn't due to injury or vacation. I am a self-admitted, and I'm not proud of it, workaholic. I had some time off, and was my conscience or just like my interest, my alpha male said, that video that has always bothered you since 1997, why don't you go figure out something about it? You got 4 hours today. Let's go figure out something about it. And that is when, again, in 2019, I put the pedal to the metal and started an investigation, self-funded, totally journalistic credibility and methodology to study this film, to simply find if it was real or a hoax. And if it was a hoax, did Hollywood do it or the government do it? I don't think a lot of people expected me to say the government, but they do magic, it's called. And that's when I started the deep dive into this completely bizarre film, this 2 minute, 56-second film of alleged interrogation, a thought projection, questioning. I like to say I don't like interrogation of an off-planet being, an EBEN, EBEN, extraterrestrial biological entity. And for 5 years, with the help of military intelligence insiders, with the help of UFO experts, with the help of ordinary American people. I believe, with all journalistic credibility, that I have solved the provenance of this film.
Okay, when was the first time you saw the film?
It was 97. And I tell everybody, and I don't try to impress people, I'm trying to impress upon you why this has grabbed me. Matt, I'm living in downtown Chicago, high rise. I'm dating this beautiful, sexy blonde who's my wife now, 23 years later. Driving a black Porsche. I got a boat on Lake Michigan. I'm wrestling part time. I'm an automobile dealer, wholesaling, exporting, just this crazy, exciting life. I'm running for state rep in Illinois, also my first foray into politics. And this documentary comes on, alien interview. And I'm thinking, well, it's going to be like a weird looking human handing a clipboard over to a general at the Pentagon on a closed circuit camera, interview. And I see it, 20 minutes into the documentary, I see this unprofessional, non Hollywood produced, continuous 3 minute shot of a gray alien. Here's the problem, it's not gray, it's tan. It doesn't have the gray almond eyes, it's got round eyes. The mouth is moving, opening and closing, just this little slit, which I thought, even back then, animatronically, to do it that fast would have been really, really hard. The two doctors come in when this being becomes in distress. They come in short sleeve scrubs and mask and gloves on. If I was hoaxing this, I'd have them in biocontainment suits. And then there's two shadows, two people in the foreground that are sometimes getting their shoulders in the camera angle. I'm like, this is either the worst hoax on planet Earth, or it's so bad that there's got to be some provenance that this is authentic. And when you hear Victor, this is the whistleblower that came forward to this video production company and said, look, I've got this 3 minute film. I'm a former government employee. I was down in this facility. I want to expose what's called the Alien Interrogation and Retention Program. Here's the video. They interviewed him. And on top of everything else, this I've never heard someone speak more intelligently in my life. He makes a statement that, do we get a lot of information from these beings, from at night, from 97 and back? And he says, minor technical, bits and pieces of information. And the communication is hard because the aliens are about 10,000 years advanced than us, and uh, they're trying to thought projection their views, or the modalities of physics and gravity, to us, and we just have our own conception of physics. And he says it's like putting calculus into the the screets and grunts and groans and growls of a chimpanzee. How it's it, this and how advanced these beings are. It's like us handing a CD-ROM and a CD player to somebody in 1820. They would hear the music and think it was magic. And that's about how these beings have come across to us. He says that it's at the whole program is one big ego deflation for the scientist, that they can't understand these concepts, that they thought they knew everything about physics and propulsion and gravity and space and time. And they can't even grasp the concepts, most of them, of the beings. And it's a huge ego deflation. And one thing I always forget to talk about is that there was a small cabal of people inside this facility. The facility is called S2 Alpha, and it was the Site 2 Alpha, and the A is for Annex 2. This is where this alien retention and interrogation program took place. And he said the security measures were so draconian, and we heard this from Bob Lazar. Whether Bob was down there or not, I don't know. We heard this from a sentry guard who came forward a year before Bob Lazar, that it was just the security was like so draconian, so over the top. And this cabal of 5 people conspired together in Las Vegas, out because this facility was located about 10 miles south of Area 51, to sneak out some sort of data, whether it be material, photos, reports, or film. And the film is what they actually snuck out, and also a dossier called the United States government's um, uh, uh, the United States government's examination of extraterrestrial life, huge docket, which has never surfaced, but this film did. And Jeff Broadstreet, the director of the documentary, spent 3 weeks vetting Victor to see if he was a Hollywood actor. And 25 years later, the director still tells everybody, "Look, we didn't hire this guy. We didn't make up this video." And Jeff eloquently says, "Explain to me how a retired government employee that didn't drive on a government pension in '96, because that's when he came to the
Right.
office. How did he make $150,000 production, hire animatronic experts and craft catering and rent the stage to shoot all this? How did a government scientist on a retired pension who didn't drive, how did he accomplish that? That just doesn't seem real. And it's the Occam's razor. The simplest explanation of all of this is that the government filmed it. This film was cleverly taken out of Area 51, and I know how now, and I will get into that. And when he retired and thought he was cleared enough from this facility and who he was, he released the film on through Rocket Pictures on the UPN network, not Fox, on a series called Strange Universe, and this was a 1 hour documentary. And I think because of the alien interview, which what people were saying was a hoax a year before, this film, and because of its bizarreness, fell through the cracks in the government, in news, and in UFO researchers.
So you decided to contact the producer. Is that
Oh, through my 5-year investigation, I probably have written 180 press releases. I've tried to contact 60 reporters. I'm at right now 45 ufologists, 7 military experts, four who helped me deeply.
I
3 of
I
these
I
military people are military intelligence retired insiders. Been contacting with the producer, the CEO of the production company, and it's just this casual conversation of it's not fake. We
okay.
didn't fake it. We didn't hire Victor. He came
Okay,
to
well,
us out of the blue.
all right. So he came to them, you reached out. What was your first process? I understand everything you're trying to kind of consolidate in 5 minutes, but we have more than 5 minutes.
But
So
yeah,
what was the so what was the first, what was your first step? You saw it, you said, let me take a look at this thing. You started that process by contacting who?
okay, great question. So this bizarre physiological monitor, if you're going to show the film, is behind by this creature. The blip does not go across the screen. It goes up and down and stays stationary. Never seen that before. We still don't know what that is. It's the only part of my investigation that I really have not had any conclusive information about. And also on the bottom of this film is digital overlay graphics placed on the film itself later in production or when they made 2 copies at the Groom Lake Photo Lab. It says DNI/27, Delta November India, which Victor tells us stands for the Department of Naval Intelligence. Just remember that. And then /27. So I've got this film in my mind. It's 1999, and I run for United States Congress. I drop out and endorse a man who became the congressman and an Illinois senator. And he had a senator, present sitting senator, on our bus tour when I dropped out, and we went around the end of the campaign to help him, the end of the cycle of the election. And I asked this senator, who was a former Navy person, and I'm sure people can, put 2 and 2 together. And I don't want to say his name anymore because I've been admonished for doing so. And when he got off the stage to make a speech, we took a picture and I looked at him. I said, Senator, before we get back on the bus, what is the Department of Navy Intelligence? And Matthew, he looked, this jovial senator got this aggressive look, stared at me with these black coal eyes. He's like, you don't need to know anything about that. Stormed off to talk to me for the rest of the bus tour. And I do wrap ups. So I'm thinking, wait a minute. I got a hoaxed video, right? Supposed hoax video. 3 letters on the hoax video that a screenwriter, 24-year-old screenwriter in 1996 put on to hoax us. We can't find what the Department of Naval Intelligence is, 96 or 2023. So why would you put a department that no one can find I mean, you're hoaxing yourself. And why did these 3 letters, I'm saying this in my mind, piss off a United States senator? And I remember saying to myself, sitting alone on the bus, "What in the hell is going on with this video?" And then normal life takes over, Matt. And it's the start of COVID again. Like I said, I had some time off, and I said, "Let me figure something out about this film." And this is 2019, and I started with the physiological monitor, folks. It looked like a pane of glass with this green blip going up and down, stationary, not horizontally across the monitor. Bizarre. So, trying to be a good journalist and investigator, I find 3 PhD candidates who did the history of physiological monitors. I mean, is there anybody better to go to get their
Right.
opinion on what is this? And they looked at the film, and these 3 PhD candidates said, "Mr. Stewart, we have no idea what that is. We've never, in all of our years of research, we have never seen that, heard of that. It doesn't make sense that the blip goes up and down and not across the screen. And we are to tell you that we have no idea what that monitor is." That wasn't enough. I'm trying to be a good journalist. I call Hewlett Packard and Space Labs. They were the 2 companies in the 90s that made physiological monitors for retail consumption, and Space Labs made it for NASA. Right? These great companies to call. And I literally asked for their physiological monitoring engineering departments, research and development. And one of them emailed me back, said, we're all here looking at your film in engineering. We have no idea what this is. We've never seen this even at a trade show. We've never seen concept drawings of this." And I'm thinking PhD candidates don't know what this is. The engineers at Hewlett Packard don't know what this is. I get a crusty 60 something year old guy at Space Lab. I'm sorry, Space Lab sent me the we don't know what it is. I get a crusty 60 something year old guy at Hewlett Packard. And and he's calling me kid. And I show him the video, and he's like, "Kid, I don't know what that is." I said, "Sir, have you ever seen this at a trade show? In 30 years of being a physiological engineer, have you ever heard of somebody say we could try and develop this, or a single blip, it goes up and down?" He goes, "You're not listening to me. I don't know what this is." He goes, "But I'm telling you, if you're telling me this is in a government lab or a government facility, it could be a one of." And I'm like, "Oh, well, what's a one of?" He said, "Well, in any application, scientific, let's say you're trying to figure out a situation, solve a problem, a formula, you would develop, and there was no device to help you, let's say like a metal detector if you're looking for gold in the ground, you would develop and put to concept, conceive and develop and manufacture a one of device, just one of a kind, to help you figure out your situation." I said, "Don't laugh at me." I said, "Would you develop a one of physiological monitor if you knew that a bean had a really bizarre heart and lung sac and not a traditional heart and lung?" First time, and has happened a lot for 5 years. Didn't laugh at me, Matthew. He didn't hang up on me. He didn't, you know, cough and be like, "Oh dear God." And he went, "Yeah, that's exactly what I would have done if this was an alien and he didn't have a regular human heart. Of course, you'd have to make up a special device." So again, I'm sitting in my car and I'm going, okay, we've got a pissed off senator. We've got a department, Navy intelligence. Nobody knows what it is. I've got a strip mall video production company. Listen to my words, folks. A strip mall video production company that has somehow magically invented the most bizarre physiological monitor ever known to man, and an animatronic doll that probably would have cost, what we were told, 70 to $100,000 back then, 5 people to work it. And we know that the budget that they got from the UPN network and Strange Universe to put this 1 hour documentary on was just over $100,000. And we know what Victor was paid. We know what Jeff Broadstreet basically was paid. How did this happen? No money, a retired scientist who doesn't drive, this monitor, the pissed off senator, the department that doesn't exist. And here I am in 2019, Matthew. I'm sure you've had moments like this, that any of your other viewers, when you're trying to figure out something, you sit back and you go, "My God, what am I getting into? What this is no longer some semi-retired grandfather's hobby. I'm starting to fall down the rabbit hole. And I said, well, I'm gonna keep going and go further and try and find even more about this video.
Okay. But you still hadn't contacted the producer or the
No,
sorry.
no, it's right. So I had information, but I did not have knowledge. Knowledge is from people being in, dealing with it, first person witnessing this, maybe this program. Matthew, I knew no one really in the UFO community. I know nobody in military intelligence, barely in the military. But I knew that some UFO researchers, when they published books or they did radio interviews, would get contacted sometimes from people in the know and with their desire to help out that UFO researcher. So I went on the Jeff Rent's program. Jeff has had and still has a very uh, 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 alternative news website, reminiscent of Drudge. He's got a radio, internet radio show. So in 2021, I went on the Jeff Rent's program and talked about where I was at with the monitor and the senator and so on. And lo and behold, it was the first week of June. This was right before Memorial Day. I get an email from a gentleman, claims to be an insider, and he says, I enjoyed your interview. You got some things right, got a couple of things wrong. I'd like to keep in touch with you. If you have any questions, you might think of for me if I can help you. And I'll never forget the word. He said, if I can nudge your investigation in any way, please let me know. I don't know how much I can tell you, but I'll do my best. And I would
Oh,
get
wait a minute.
emails from him
Hold on.
the
Wait.
first
Who
week
who
of
was
every
this?
month. Sorry.
Who was this again?
Sorry, I'm sorry. After doing this Jeff Rent's program, I
Right.
got a random email from I don't know who it was at this
Okay.
point.
Okay. So you know.
Seemed to
Okay.
me
You
like
never.
a male,
Right.
he said, I caught your program. I'm in the know. I'm not with military intelligence, but I have been read into these programs. Like I said, I'll help you if I can and give your investigation a nudge. And wow, you got some things right. You got a couple of things wrong, what you were talking about.
Right. Did
And
you ever figure out
for
who
the
that was?
well, I will tell you, I can't
Okay.
reveal his name because he is
Sorry.
my deep throat, like
Okay.
Woodward and Bernstein in the Watergate investigation. It was he did this communicate with me uh, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, for 10 months. And on my birthday, he sends me the list, and I don't want to mince my words here. He sends me the list of the report from the Defense Intelligence Agency. That is who ran the alien interrogation program south of Area 51, the DIA. He must have had a contact in the DIA who sent him and this is my vernacular, like an internal investigation for the director of the DIA back in either 91 or 97 when this video surfaced of how this video film was smuggled out. But more importantly, I got the names of the military men who were in the viewing gallery watching this alien interview through the partition glass. And it, it was shocking to me. My hand was shaking because I was seeing people's names that I've never seen before, that I never heard of in ufology. And he told me the real date of the film, which the whistleblower Victor got wrong, the name of the facility, which was S2 Alpha. Victor said it was S4. We know that the bottom level of S2 Alpha is called S4, and there's a lot of commotion about that on the internet. Um, and so it also said that it wasn't smuggled out in the butt crack of Victor in a microfilm, that the United States Air Force cameraman simply took this film when the interview was finished with this being. He was driven back to the Groom Lake Photo Lab, not Area 51 photo lab, the Groom Lake photo lab by a United States Air Force police officer. Wouldn't you have liked to have been in that car for the 15-minute to Area 51? And 3 days later, not that day, real specifics. 3 days later, 2 copies of the film were made, and the 3-minute version was put into a United States government burn bag. I don't even know what the GSA was at the time, and it was the burn bag that was let out of Area 51 and then recollected by the U.S. Air Force cameraman, not Victor. So there's a new person in this whole fold, which is the Air Force cameraman really smuggled this out. And Victor was the one that simply went on camera. But Matthew, just having the names, it's not any kind of an investigation. So I started to process and dig into each one of the names. Again, these are the men that were viewing the being behind the viewing partition in the interview suite down at level S4 in S2 Alpha building. And the first name was a retired Air Force person, famous son of a World War II veteran, not MacArthur, not Patton, not Eisenhower. And he was on the Wikipedia. It said he then worked for TRW. I'm like, well, this is a hoax. The guy wasn't even in the Air Force at the time. He was being allowed to view this alien. And then I called Sean David Morton, who was instrumental in the first documentary as a
Well,
researcher. He said,
what
John, my family,
are you gonna
some of my family
you gonna
worked for
say the guy's name?
TRW.
Are you gonna say
Sean
the guy's
David
name?
Morton.
Oh,
And
okay.
he said TRW does so many black projects for the government, they might as well be the government. That does not disqualify him. If anything, that even proves even more of a provenance of why he might have been down there. Interesting. Okay. Still to this day, no one's debunking this thing for me. The next person was a rear admiral. I look him up, and to my shock, he was listen to me, folks, the intelligence liaison for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, reporting directly to Colin Powell. This is 91. And
Who
he
is
was
that?
in the Oval Office with Colin Powell, briefing the President of the United States, George H. Bush at the time. He is dead, and he is the only name I'm going to release. His name was Admiral Schaefer. His nickname was Ted. And he was allegedly down in this facility also. But remember what he did. He was intelligence liaison for the Joint Chiefs and for Colin Powell, briefed the president. Very important you remember that in about 20 minutes from now. The next person was a captain in naval intelligence, a Wikipedia. He retired a vice admiral. I'm like, well, this is a hoax. They said he's a captain. One of my investigators, Chris Jackson, former police officer, he's like, dummy, dummy. This this investigation briefing was either from 91 was from was taken from information in 91. Do you think maybe back in 91 he was an Army, a United States Navy captain, and 25 years later he became an admiral? And I'm like, oh my God, that's true. That this list is from 91, not from 2023. So I find his email. I email him, and we have this great relationship. 3 or 4 emails. It was actually three because the fourth one is when he ghosted me. 3 emails back and forth. Matthew, I was actually going to go to Virginia and ask him out for lunch or for coffee, or I don't know, what do retired military people do? Play golf? But this is how friendly we were with each other. He asked me to. I almost gave him his nickname. He asked me to call him his nickname, which felt very uncomfortable for me. And at the fourth email, he said, before you come out, what do you have? What is this documentary about? And I'm like, Vice Admiral, this is very hard for me. I have relatives in the military. I respect the military. I'm proud to say that I was one of the progenitors with Senator Mark Kirk, who kept the North Chicago VA administration center open when we found out it was being closed. So please take that as a grain of salt. But I'm going to send you a report. Your name's on it. It's as bizarre as it gets. And please let me know what you think. And this friendly guy with these friendly interactions ghosted me, refused to email me back, call me, anything. completely ghost me. And in my opinion, Matthew, in 2022, if you're electronically ghosting somebody after such a nice, camaraderie of emails, that speaks volumes. That's saying a million words. I've talked to military people. Most people in the military, people on the internet want me to say most, not all, and that's true. Most people in the military are very honorable, and they're not going to lie to your face. And instead, what they'll do, they just won't talk to you, so they're not forced to lie. So he just refused to talk to me. About 8 months later, a month ago, Dr. Michael Sala, who runs Exopolitics, he was a government, a litigator for countries, and just a PhD, just a wonderfully bright man. He emailed him, and the vice admiral emailed back and said, I'm just not interested in talking anything about my past military career. And Dr. Sala wrote me back and said, I can't believe it. He's real. He's legit. He's a real person. It's amazing. And so I'm like, wow, this is getting creepier by the day. Again, nobody just debunking it. This is the really two interesting parts. Then it comes to the doctors who came in to the beans area to tend to the bean when it was having a respiratory attack, a coughing attack. And I Googled both of their names. The doctor to the bean's right on the film, who's just holding the bean's shoulders, he died in California about 5 years ago. I find, Matthew, his widow, his second wife, who is his widow. I call her up. Now imagine telling an 80-year-old woman, you know, I think your husband was involved in aliens. Can you imagine? It's like, it was really uncomfortable for me, but I told her the entire story quickly. And I don't get hung up on. She's not laughing. And there's a pause. And I'm not being melodramatic. I'm just relating this verbatim. And she said, Jon, the light just went on above my head. I'm like, what? She's like, this completely makes sense now. And I'm like, I'm going to call her Kim. I'm like, Kim, can you explain what you're talking about? She said, Jon, ever since I've been married to my husband, he's never wanted to talk about his time in the United States Army Medical Corps. Now, I never said Army Medical Corps. That is on this report from the DIA. It's Dr. So and so, United States Army Medical Corps. So, how did this 80-year-old woman know what was going to be on this report describing what her husband was or the branch of military? Interesting. She said he never wanted to talk about his time in the U.S. Army Medical Corps. She goes, Jon, what's even more funny, our friend group, our social group, has veterans from Vietnam, Korea, World War II, and they all talk of funny stories of a drill instructor or the conditions at boot camp or non-combat humorous stories. And we all would ask ourselves and to each other, why does my husband never want to talk about his time in the military? What secret or secrets was my husband holding onto? And she said this phone call after 20 years makes complete sense. And I really appreciate you calling me. And if you have anything else, my daughter, you said you live in the Chicago area. My daughter lives in the Chicago suburbs. Here's her name. Here's her email. If you ever want to get together and coffee and ask her about my husband, please do so. And she goes, I'm going to tell her what you told me and, you know, do what you want with it. I'm like, wait a minute. Some unknown person sends me this list. I start vetting it. No one's laughing. No one's hanging up the phone. Like, I knew I was in deep at that point. Here's another bizarre one. The next doctor. I find out in 1991 that he was working for the VA. Not that the VA has the best doctors in the world, but working for the VA, I would think it's like being on the bench as a pitcher in baseball for the government. You can be plucked out at any time and moved anywhere for any need. And remember, the creature in this film has a coughing respiratory attack. What did this doctor do in the VA in 1991? He was a pulmonologist. Now that's either the greatest coincidence, pulmonology, dealing with breathing,
Yeah.
lungs, and they must have brought this doctor in because the creature was suffering from a debilitating respiratory issue. Victor tells us that even though they eliminated microbial bacteria from their ecosystems, that's a verbatim quote, that they still were susceptible to having microbes form, and for biologists, I'm butchering this, still form in the respiratory system, no matter how advanced and how high tech these beings were. And this doctor must have been brought in as a pulmonologist and an expert to see if he could figure out how to, treat or care for this being. He is still practicing medicine in Connecticut. And his pictures on the internet with his lab coat on and his office hours. And, you know, you're seeing a man tend to an alien from off planet. And now you're seeing his picture on, Google. It was bizarre. It was bizarre. And then it said there was two other telepaths in the room. And let me talk about the telepathy program. It was actual thought projection. What I had been told by two different people was you didn't have to mentally ask the being the question. You would sit down as a telepath, and in your mind, for lack of a better word, you would get, yes, I know you want to talk about the object that's in the Indian Ocean. I really don't know much about it. And, before you could say to the being in your mind, can you tell me about the object in the Indian Ocean? And another anecdotal story that I got from a military insider was the communication was difficult. And this is a great anecdotal story. If you want to call it bullshit, that's great. But I thought this was a really interesting anecdotal story of the communication barrier. The telepath would get the thought of, do you know where I'm coming from? And he would turn to an army or a navy or an intelligence person in the room and say, he's asking us, do we know where he comes from? I guess that's like a star system. When in fact, or sorry, I'm jumbling that. The telepath would say, he's asking me, do you know where I'm coming from? Like he's getting like snippy with me. When in fact the being was relating, do you know where I come from? What star system, what
Right.
galaxy, or what moon, or what part of the universe that I come from. So there was a very, very, very hard communication problem with the telepaths and these beings. But it was told that these two telepaths that were in the room and that interview were remarkable. They were able to sit down with this being and immediately turn around. And I'm imitating what a military person was showing me. They would be able to turn around immediately and say, okay, his spaceship was designed and built at a molecular level. It's not like where we do, where we layer metal and do rivets. And, you know, they would get immediate, clear, definitive information from these beings. It was remarkable. But many people, including Victor, said that the telepath program, they were hiring people and getting telepaths that were one step above 1-800 psychics, back in the 80s and 90s. And this is not something I would like to pivot. Something that relates with Bob Lazar and another person named Danny Bush, Captain Danny Burrish, who was claimed to be down in the facility. The government loves people who are a little off. Their education is sketchy. Um, They have an interesting background. They can't prove a lot of the provenance of their education or their profession or their expertise, and why. So when they come out and expose things, they can debunk them.
Right. They're
And
easily
when I just said to
discredited.
you, look at myself. I'm not a government plant. I mean, my daughters spit up their Cocoa Puffs at the table when I said somebody on the internet says I'm a CIA agent. You know, but have I been used and debriefed to get this information out? It's possible. And look at me, you know, went to 6 colleges. In my professional wrestling career, I had a Ric Flair gimmick with the boa sequin robe. I was an automobile dealer and a politician. Could you pick any more professions that people laugh at? So look at who, to some degree, a portion of the government is letting the information come to, and letting this person now being the figurehead of this video. I
And
am completely um, can be just discredited my education and who I was in my
Oh,
crazy life and lifestyle back in the day. So
all right.
this is not an uncommon
Hello.
thing for the government to do.
All
Not
right.
uncommon to
Can you
pull,
hear me?
a psychic and say, "Hey, do you want to think you can, do telepathy through an alien?" I see you.
Okay. Okay.
Having a hard time
So
hearing you. Oh, I hear you
they
now.
okay, they choose people that are easily discredited. Got it.
Yes, sir.
So
That's my point.
here's one of my questions for you. You say you've got the list, you were sent a list, but the only person's name that you're willing to release is someone who's deceased. Do you see how how that's problematic?
Totally. And let me follow that up.
Okay.
7 UFO researchers that I trust have this list. Okay. The minute I got it, I drove to Wisconsin and I met the Roswell expert. He was J. Allen Hynek of Blue Book's assistant in Chicago. His name is Donald Schmidt. He is currently right now in New Mexico looking for more metal from the Roswell crash. He's head of the International UFO Consortium. The weekend I got it, I drove to show it to him. Remember, I don't want to be Bernie Madoff. I don't want to be Elizabeth Holmes. Disclosure. And yes, um, we are still, and two other reasons that this is keeping the list not public. Number one, um, we are filming a documentary. It's not out yet. I have no agreements. So, that is part, that is part of my material that I would like to present in my way. The second biggest problem is we still don't know the legality of what I have in bringing out these people's names. I don't want this doctor's office to be sieged with vans and satellite trucks and UFO people calling them. This is a very murky and very sticky situation that I'm in. But I want everyone to know I'm looking in the camera 7 UFO experts, 2 law firms, 2 producers, and 2 people inside naval intelligence who are on this list have this report. So I didn't hide this from anyone. From anyone. And I am willing to show, I call him the chairman. I'd like to get how I exposed to myself the man that gave me this list. Anyone that wants to fly to Chicago, I will come face to face without any cameras. I'll show you his picture in the newspaper, who he is. You'll probably fall off your chair. He's a very prominent person in a metropolitan city. So, 9 people have this list. I want to be very clear to that. And respected UFO researchers. This list is with Congress too, and Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project.
Okay. So you you went through, you spoke with everyone that it was possible to speak with on
Correct.
the list. You were essentially you got some bits of information, but some also just were either deceased or they didn't want to speak anymore. But their titles and locations and everything connected with the list that you received. So
91. Yes. Yep.
what was what was your next step?
Okay. So I had a little break. You got all this information. You showed the UFO researchers and experts, quality, trusted people. Um, Linda Moulton Howe, most respected person in ufology, a journalist, award-winning journalist, said, "You got gold here." I said, "Why do I have gold?" She's like, "Because I have never heard of one of these men." And sometimes fraudulent UFO people come forward with retread names. She's like, "You're coming forward with people that we've never heard of, and they're verifiable through Wikipedia or Google or any kind of a search like that." So I'm looking at my emails from this man who got the DIA report for me. And I realized, Matthew, that he was emailing me the first week of every month. And it kind of sunk in because my father was on a board of directors for 35 years of a credit union in Illinois. And they met the first week of every month for a board of directors meeting that's called the Open Meetings Act. And I said, I'm wondering if this person is on a board of directors. And then I took his email. I should have done this 10 months ago. I just didn't. You're in the moment. You're not thinking clearly. I have ADD. I can be a dingaling too and not think clear. I'm like, wait a minute. Why don't I try and back, try and find out what this email connects to. And I have a program through the automobile industry, believe it or not, that does that. And I found out that the email connected to an institution, I'm going to leave it at that, in a metropolitan city. And through my research, I called the number. It was this man's daughter's office that the email was coming from. And my speculation, based on, you know, a lot of anecdotal evidence, is that when this man would come for a board of directors meeting once a month, he would go into his daughter's office and use her computer and email me. And I was pretty proud that I did the Columbo investigation and kind of realized that. And I actually spoke to her, but of course I lied to her. Didn't tell her exactly why I was calling. I got her name. It's not the name. And that's why I call my main whistleblower the chairman, because he was on a board of directors in an institution in a metropolitan city. And, so I had all this provenance, and I said, well, what else can I do? Now, there was a man in Europe who dissected the video piece by piece, and he found microscopic eyebrow movements. He found the mouth opening and closing, and so did journalist Jaime Musan in Mexico, who emailed me, John, close up on the mouth. You're going to fall off your chair. It opens and closes instantaneously, and it doesn't have any protruding animatronic metals or whatnot. So trying to know that I'm going to get vetted, I'm going to be asked, my investigation is going to be microscopically analyzed. I then paid $2,500, and my wife was not happy, to an animatronic expert in California, who was hired by National Geographic to do a deep dive microscopic analysis of the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film. I mean, what better guy to take this to, right? If National
Right.
Geographic trusts him. So I spent $2,500. I gave him the film. He immediately, 3 days later, sends me back a picture of the monitor. And the monitor, because an FX person told us, well, it's a pane of glass. They're bouncing a laser on it. Somebody off camera. He said, it's not a pane of glass. It's a device. It's a box. It's surrounded by metal. It's an actual monitor. I'm like, okay. 4 days later, he writes me back and he's like, I got a head scratcher here. This is the man hired by National Geographic's pretty well respected animatronics person and especially video expert in California. He said, John, I've been doing animatronic puppets for 30 years. Never, never in my life. And he sent me 20 pictures as examples. Have I seen an animatronic puppet where it does not have creases in the armpits, in the arm folds? And he said that happens because about 75% of the drying process. Folks, this is what I was told. It could be 80, half. Somebody could have a different technique. But at some point in the drying process of an animatronic creature being, you have to hold up the creature where his arms come down to the side of his body. And I'm doing that with my, and he goes, and when the arms come down to the side of the puppet's body, it is then the creases appear or are created from that movement. And he goes, I'm scratching my head. I've spent a day staring at it. That alien does not have any creases in its arm fold. And I can't tell you for the life of me why. Now he goes, I can't say this is 100%. I don't have the bean and formaldehyde. I don't know anyone that has this puppet on their shelf or in their garage in Hollywood. He said, but I'm telling you, that arm crease, that is a massive, massive red flag that it is not an animatronic puppet. So here I sit. Now I've got an expert telling me that there's a great possibility that this could be real. And I always tell people that this is the investigation that keeps giving. Um, so I had all this nomenclature and I had all these names and facilities. And I know that he was a counterintelligence person, 30 years ago. And he dissuades people that maybe it's a UFO, maybe it's a government program. And his name is Richard Doty. He works for the Air Force. And I just asked Richard Doty to break down the military nomenclature and just wade him to ask him about the film. Because somebody, and I'm not calling Richard this at all, but because somebody was in the mafia, do you not, as a reporter, want to still interview them, even though they may have lied and murdered? Or again, I'm not saying that that is Doty, but the point being is, just because somebody has done something checkered or eyebrow raising in the past, doesn't mean that that's that person in present day. And Doty said, I said, Rick, do you know if this Victor film is real? He's like, it is absolutely real. He goes, but Victor was lying. I'm like, oh, here we go. It's going to be it's going to be debunked. He said it wasn't at S4 technically. The level is called S4 that the interview suite is at. He said, but the building is called S2 Alpha, Sector 2 Annex. And that is where the alien retention interrogation program takes place. I'm like, okay. I said, can you tell me anything? Tell me anything else? He said that that I can't believe what I'm about to say. How these stories prove each other for two people that don't know each other. He said, John, I don't know anything really else about the film. I know that Victor was a biologist. I never said biologist. He said, but I'll tell you one thing. I remember back in 96 in intelligence circles, because we gossip more than, women at a PTA meeting. And I don't mean to be degrading towards women, but, we gossip more than five guys at a golf outing. He goes, I remember the director of the documentary doing a deep dive and really having sharp elbows and pissing off intelligence people trying to figure out if Victor was indeed a government employee. Now, think about that. Here's Rick Doty telling me a story from 25 years ago that the director, who supposedly hired an actor, right? That's what the skeptics say, that the director, who supposedly hired an actor, is vetting this actor in through military people and military intelligence sources and pissing people off. Why would you vet an actor that you hired through central casting? So again, you know, uh, 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 another anecdotal story from two people that don't know each other, that crisscrossed and overlapped. I mean, man, it never ended. I go on the internet to the guy that does reverse speech, David Oates. Regardless of whether you think of the science of reverse speech, it takes a statement, then it plays it backwards, and some extraordinary, words come out relating to your subconscious. He starts debunking Bob Lazar, Richard Hoagland, the guy that does the Mars anomalies. And then I find where he does Victor. And I'm like, oh, here we go. You know, he's going to bust me. Victor's a fraud. And Victor in reverse speech says from the Pleiades. And then another party says in my head, meaning thought projection. And David Oates, the scientist for reverse speech, um, says, quote, that in my opinion, the whistleblower Victor, who brought out the alien interview, is a highly credible witness and says who he says he is. This isn't part of my investigation. I didn't hire David Oates to prove the provenance of
Right.
my investigation. Far be it. And it came to the point where I know I'm missing something here. It came to the point where I just couldn't find anyone to debunk it. And I want to be very clear, Matthew, in 25 years, not one credible person, the person that built the puppet, a person that worked on the catering for that day during that shoot, the two military men that are in the foreshadow, anybody in the production, no one with any credibility in Hollywood or the government has come forward to say it's debunked. And this is exactly how I can tell you with proof that it's been debunked. Nobody in 25 years. You mean to tell me, Matt, I know you're gonna agree with me on this. You mean to tell me in 25 years, the guy that made the puppet isn't at a pool party in Calabasas trying to impress the Kardashian girls, or some girl trying to pick up some girl at a pool party, and that video of that alien? I did the doll. Nobody can figure out how I did it. And even like last week, we had a superimposed image of the film. Because people said, well, the alien's black eyes, oh, it's a piece of glass, or it's just a glass ball. We did a reverse imaging, like an X-ray of the film. You see the pupils of the eye in back of these black light reflecting lenses, because they're light sensitive, of two eyeballs. And you see the pupil getting bigger and smaller as the torchlight is shined in the eyes by the medic, or it encounters the light that is above the beam. We have pupils dilating on this beam. Why would an animatronic person put eyeballs in back of black glass? Well, nobody's going to see that or realize that. They wouldn't know that 25 years later we could prove that it was pupils. And when I had all of this information together, I vetted my sources and no one was coming forward. I took my investigation to Congressman Burchett. I flew to Washington, D.C. I handed this investigation, the internal report, all of the witnesses, the names, the provenance, who Victor was, what occupation he did. He was a biologist. And I handed it to Congressman Tim Burchett's office, who was running and ran the subcommittee hearings on the United States government and UFO and UAP and alien phenomenon, which was yesterday. And this investigation is submitted into the 1 gig tetrabyte packet from Dr. Stephen Greer. It's in part of the disclosure project. So, and hopefully, I can have some sort of documentary where we come out with all these names. We go in even a deeper dive on all of these names and bring forth some of the witnesses who'd be willing to talk on camera, and I can just kind of package this whole thing together and show the world that, for lack of a better term, in my opinion, I have proven the second greatest question in mankind. Are we alone? No. And does the government know about it? Absolutely.
Did you talk to the producer of the film?
Tom Coleman was the CEO of Rocket Pictures. I don't know how many more times he could write and tell me on the phone or on Zoom, Jon, we did not hire this actor. We didn't produce that film. The director who did both documentaries, let me talk about the second documentary. If this is albeit for you, if this is a hoaxer, Victor, then he's the best one I've ever seen. But the director, Jeff Broadstreet, who did both documentaries, he's almost like frustrated at this point. He's like, how many times can I tell you? Victor was a government biologist. He brought in this film. I didn't make up this production of that alien you see in the film. Yes, they did a B-roll recreation alien to show people before they showed the real film. He said, I do not know anyone that was part of that filming. And he goes, Jon, if it was, it's the worst filming ever. It's one shot. The two military men in the foreshadow, their shoulders come into the view. People have asked why wasn't it a 3-camera shot? They've had these beans since 1947. I was told by a military person, and he pantomimed this for me. It's like, oh, okay, the bean's sitting down. Hal, do you have the camera ready? Okay, roll camera. All right, start asking questions. I don't mind to be disrespectful to these beans, but it's old hat by now. They didn't need a 3-camera shoot. They just needed to film this for documentation. It doesn't, just like to some degree the alien autopsy, which could be a hoax. You're not there for a Hollywood production. You're just there to shoot and be a documentarian of what the action is going on, whether it's blurry or out of focus. And by the way, this was never out of focus, was never blurry. Nobody tried to dissuade you. And people have asked me, why is the room so dark? It wasn't dark in the original VHS tape. It was bluish, kind of grainy. The production company darkened the film for dramatic effect. And I know that probably wasn't the best thing to do, but I have the film. It's bluish color. It's on YouTube, and it's shocking. You see the bean's arms. You see its chest. This was not a darkened room to hide a puppeteer. Believe me.
So, okay.
And so it's now with Congress, and I'm hopefully will be called at some point in the future for a congressional hearing to tell what I know and tell the entire provenance of the film. Now here's the other one. In '08, 10 years later, Victor comes back for a second documentary. He's livid. Now, Matthew, listen to my words, because this is where I want you to mentally unpack this. If this is a charlatan, he comes back. He is livid. I risked my life, my career, my pension to help the UFO world and to tell the American people what is going on with the government. And not one UFO researcher has done any, this is in '08, has done any kind of a serious investigation of my film, of the alien. Prove it's a puppet. Prove that it's real. Prove who I am. And Jeff Broadstreet, the director, says, well, many people in the UFO world, listen to this, many people in the UFO world believe that it's real. Victor gets pissed at that statement. He goes, I don't want people to take it at face value. That's all they're doing is taking it at face value. And these charlatans affects people, these egomaniacs that I could have built that. Victor says, well, build one that looks and moves exactly like that alien in the picture. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know many charlatans that come back out and go, come on, come on, prove me wrong, prove the film. And mad at people. Now, if I was a charlatan, I would say, yeah, people believe me. Here's who believe me. This guy is mad at the people that believe him because, in his words, they're just taking it at face value. He said he's dying in the second follow up documentary. He says to look up where Donald Rumsfeld was on Easter of 1998. I did that through the Rumsfeld Foundation. He was having dinner in Taos, New Mexico, which is coincidentally the nearby home of the Dulce base, which whether is real or not. I did everything Victor asked. Where is the person that is going to do the deep dive on this and prove it right or wrong, authentic or hoax? And I did just that. And I just don't feel that a charlatan would come out and egg people on. And also, what people don't understand, right before the original documentary, Victor goes on the Art Bell program, radio show, unrehearsed, unscripted questions, and sits there for an hour and a half. I've never heard someone speak this intelligently before in my life about the program, the people, the facility, the beings themselves. It was remarkable. So if this guy's a charlatan, I tell you what, he wasn't a Hollywood actor. So who was this Victor who didn't drive, was retired in his late 50s, who brought out this $100 to $150,000 production of an alien being, and then comes back to challenge people? That
All right.
doesn't pass the litmus test as being a hoax.
All right. So here's my question. What I must not, I don't understand. So the the basic story is what, that these aliens crashed here. Is it one alien or multiple aliens crashed here? Where did they crash? Is this the Roswell crash? And they were taken into a military base and kept until that time, and periodically they've been interviewed, and one of the interviews got out. That's the crux of the story.
I can unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
Through anecdotal stories and a photo, we believe the first body of an extraterrestrial being, happened in the 30s. Dr. Stephen Greer has this bizarre autopsy photo of a bizarre creature and military men and OSI agents, men in suits standing by and taking a picture with this. The the holy grail of ufology was in 1947 when two craft crashed over the area basically of Roswell, New Mexico.
Two?
Four beings were inside the craft that crashed. Three were dead, taken to Fort Worth. One was alive, and that was taken to Los Alamos Laboratories, where it lived until 1951 or two. For the past 80 years, there have been numerous crash retrievals. The crash retrieval program, there's two of them. One is called Project Pounce, and one is called Project STAR, STAAR. These are the retrieval programs of Special Air Force servicemen who go out at a moment's notice to retrieve the craft and any other occupants or pilots. And this has been going on since 1947. And it's a great question. This being, we think, I cannot prove this, and I don't have any evidence to prove, but this is what I've been told, that this being came from a crash in the Kalahari Desert in 1989. And Victor said that the being came to this facility in 1989. And the other being of that crash went to the super secret facility underground at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And Wright-Patterson is very important because it was the foreign materials division. If they had a crash plane in the 40s, it was taken there to dissect and, reverse engineer, so to speak. So Wright Pat plays a very important key to this whole thing. Matthew, we have anecdotal stories where there's so many crashes and so many bodies that bodies are stored at Homestead Air Force Base in Florida, Michaels Airfield, the new home of Area 51 at the Dugway Proving Grounds, Sandia Labs at a time on the basement facility at Walter Reed Hospital, Fort Worth Army Airfield, of course, initially at the Roswell Airfield in 1947, and in a couple of other facilities that I am not privy to.
And
But the new high tech area, the new Area 51, is the Dugway Proving Grounds, which is part of Michaels Airfield, or Army Airfield is part of, and coincidentally, Sandia Labs has a huge facility on that base also.
so these things are, so there's many crashes. I mean, NASA's got a better track record than that. I mean,
Right.
so what is your, based on your, actual research and not just listening to Chris Marrero, which is my buddy that I have on every
Right.
once in a while.
Right.
Um, not just believing everything you read and actually doing some research and speaking
Yes.
with people that, are in the know. What is the consensus of why they are coming here, and what is the issue with the crashes?
Great question. From three people that were either in that facility, dealt with the beans, or were at, on top level of that facility. Um, One of the reasons the government is not coming out and saying, here you go, folks, we have aliens, is even after 80 years, they're still not quite convinced of what the nature is, how many species there are. And when the government doesn't know something fully, they usually don't project that and tell the people, yeah, we have species of beings here, and we have no idea what the real reason that they're here for. And
Right.
according to people down there, so this is an anecdotal story, but from Victor, from Captain Dan Burrish, who was a pathologist at level S4, is that Victor believed that some of the beings have allowed themselves to be shot, to be acquired, to be targeted, to crash. Almost like and he gives the example, almost like Jesus Christ coming on to our planet, knowing that he's going to be crucified. I think that was a really good analogy that Victor said. And we also have developed technology, a beam like technology back in the 80s of targeting, acquiring, targeting, and engaging these craft and bringing them down. And the 1947, the infamous Roswell crash, Richard Doty now tells people, and this is backed up by other people, is that the United States government, and Stephen Greer even backs this up, and him and Doty, are not, on the same team, so to speak. That in 1947, the government first turned on this type of radar, was so powerful that in conjunction with an electrical storm caused interference with these beings craft. People say, well, they're 10,000 years advanced of us. Also too, the adages, folks, I believe, and look at America and look at the world today, the more technically advanced you are, the more susceptible you are to very minor things, knocking out your entire system. I mean, look what can take down the world now. A computer bug, a coronal ejection from the sun can wipe out all mankind in a matter of 90 days. So it is, these beings.
Well,
Um,
I was actually thinking about, I mean, let's face it, you can have all the high tech equipment you want. You can have, an M16, you can have body armor, you can have like the best military uh, equipment, and let's face it, an Indian with a bow and arrow, may still kill you. He fires that arrow, hits you in the right spot, you're going down. It doesn't matter that
Done.
you're completely draped in, Kevlar.
Right.
He hits you in the neck, you're just done.
Yeah.
And that's what 4,000-year-old technology.
Right.
So
And Matthew, people have said, well, and forgive me when I make fun of the internet keyboard warriors, but it's they deserve the criticism at times for their ad hominem attacks. Well, why is it stories are different? Why beings are here? Why are they some crash, some get captured, some abduct people? I say that the world is like the Amazon in 1820. Did British explorers go there for science? Yes. Did British explorers go there for geography? Yes. Did British explorers go there for zoology and to capture all kinds of animal life and maybe tag it and analyze it? Yes. Okay. Did some people from Britain or around the world go to the Amazon in the 1800s for recreation and vacation and adventure? Yes. Well, why are we different? I know it's an ego deflation that we are no longer sitting on top of the food chain, that these beings are on top of the food chain. They're the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, and we're the deer. They're tagging our ear, as people say they got put devices in them to track them. They're extracting semen and ova from human beings like we do to animals. Sometimes the capture and tagging goes well. Sometimes it doesn't go well and people or animals die. We're the farm. We're the wildlife now. And I know that's an ego blow, but I've come to grips with it and I can deal with it. And I think other people should too. So there's a variant, in my opinion, reason why these beings are coming here. Another thing, why did we go to Egypt or Africa in the 1800s to mine gold and silver and precious metals? Well, why can't they? Gold is an incredible physical metal that is great for space travel and space applications. We know that from NASA. Why wouldn't they come here and try to mine our gold? What makes them so special and angelic? You know, um, so the reasons why they crashed, why they abduct, why they're here, I think is the British explorer in the Amazon River analogy. I think it's a perfect representation of the who and why, and maybe nobody will ever know the full total truth. And I'm going to try and jar people here, maybe piss a couple of people off. I want to do that. I'm not a revolutionary. I'm not an interloper. Or I want to help the military come out of the closet with this. I want this to be clear because I know military people, intelligence people listen to all these podcasts. I've been told that by now 10 people. And I want to be clear. I want to jar the American public who's listening to this because this should piss you off. Scott Walter is a TV star of a show called American on Earth on the History Channel. Let me get back in better
you've
view.
been slowly moving
And
over. Yeah.
yeah, Scott is goes on camera about a year and a half ago, say that he's really interested in the UFO phenomenon, and like me, gets contacted by somebody in the program. And this gentleman worked at Wright Pat for the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, and he claimed that he was in the know of this alien phenomenon. Became very good friends with Scott. Scott vetted him, met with him, had dinner with him, and for 9 months, Scott tried to convince this person to do an interview with me and to maybe do an interview on camera to appear on my, documentary if I ever put one out. So he called me up and very nice young man. I want people to very, very nice, polite young man. And we were talking. He says that the black strips over some of the beans' eyes are a biological light lens reflector. But he said something bizarre. He said, "I'm going to tell you something. You're probably one of the only few civilians that know this, and I'm going to tell you this now. Your listeners now on this show." He told me the new designation that the United States government, who deals with this phenomenon and subcontractors, have for extraterrestrials. It's SABER, like a sword, synthetic astrobiological extraterrestrial races. And he said, no one knows that. He goes, you tell a general that you at a cocktail party in Washington that's maybe read into these programs, that an acronym, and they're going to look like they swallowed a peach pit. And And so I'm like, well, I really appreciate your trusting me with that. And I thank you. And he said, send me the questions for your documentary and I will submit it to my commanding officer. So I'm assuming that he's probably military and I will get back to you. I submitted 20 questions that were very explosive, that came point blank. Does the government have alien bodies and craft? Do you know of that personally? Am I in trouble? What is the else does the government know about aliens and extraterrestrials? He ghosts me for 3 months, and I'm worried because this guy's a bona fide military person in an alien program at Wright Pat. So I finally just after 3 months, I texted Scott Walter. I'm like, Scott, this is crazy. I want to know, is this man alive? Is he in trouble? And I guess more importantly, am I in trouble? Is my life in danger? Why would he ghost me? And about 2 hours later, Holden, that was his nickname, his name that he gave himself, which is from Catcher in the Rye, texts me back. And now it's this aggressive, terse, matter of fact text with all these coding. He was such a gentleman. It was almost like somebody from the DOD or a higher up wrote this for him. You put this now and you send this to Jon Stewart. We're going to stop that, we're going to stop that jerk right off. We're going to cut his legs off metaphorically. And it said, I am been commanded by someone higher than my CO to cease and desist all contact with you. I am asking you, you are not to cut, drop, share this text message. You are no longer to contact me. And this should piss you off. You are now on a special government watch list due to your frequent and the nature of your FOIA requests, your overseas emails, and the nature of your questionnaire that you submitted to the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. And beneath that, Matthew, is this bizarre, all I can say is like Department of Defense coding under regulation 227515 stroke A, recopying of this text message is firmly, you I'm mixing up the word, firmly, admonished by the United States Department of Defense. All of these acronyms in weird letters jumbled together. I'm like, what the hell am I reading? Like it came from somebody from the military. I called Doty 2 hours later, just because Doty knows all this nomenclature. Doty was livid that this guy was told to tell me I'm on a special watch list. Rick Doty, this counterintelligence guy, was like such a proponent for me. He's like, that's illegal. He goes, that's illegal. How dare they say that to you? That's a disgrace that the military would tell an American citizen that they're on some kind of special watch list. It's the first time I ever angered or saw this mild-mannered Richard Doty get completely, totally unglued. And I'm asking the American people, do you feel a little bothered that a 56-year-old grandfather who's just trying to find the truth about a film that they accidentally let out 25 years ago, that I'm putting on a special watch list? It's crazy. We live in a constitutional republic. I don't live in Stalingrad in 1943, and I certainly don't live in Berlin in 1944. That was really troublesome. And the fact that this man was told to ghost me. And I initially thought he was David Grush. But I was told by Scott that he is not the David Grush that came forward. But that was really troubling. That was really the only time in this investigation where I was truly upset and worried and pissed off. And I think people out there listening, they should be equally bothered by someone from the Pentagon telling me you're on a special watch list. Come on. I even get distressed as relating the story again. But that was it. That's really the investigation in a nutshell.
What did you think about the congressional hearings yesterday? Was it a hearing? Is that what it was, or
Oh yeah, it was a hearing.
committee?
It was a hearing by the United States Congress to clear the air and come clean with the American people about the UFO, UAP, alien phenomenon. And 27 times in the hearings, it was said,
again.
Wait, what was that? Yeah, I can't
It
talk.
was the same thing. It was just the same thing over and over. Like
Same.
they basically took the same interviews that they've been having, and they just got them all together in the same room.
Right. We want to come clean. We want the American people to trust the government. So that's why we're letting 37 times say, I can't tell you that right now, Congressman. I have to tell you in private. I can only tell you that, Congresswoman, is skiff, a secure room. I can only tell you that off camera. I can show you the documents, but I can't tell you. I mean, that was supposed to make everyone believe that Congress is coming clean. Stop mocking our citizenship and belittling us. Please don't have them in private. Don't have people come out and say in front of the American people, I can't talk about that. I'll tell you in private. Wink. You know, give me a break.
Okay, so that's a you weren't happy with that. What do
No,
you I have a question for you. What do you think about the Navy footage of the TikTok videos of the TikTok UFOs?
I think that because there was no rivets, there was no propulsion system in back or wings. Um, even though the government has reproduction alien craft, you still see rivets, you still see seams, you still see some sort of propulsion in the back. That the fact that these TikToks were defying gravity and upwards of 60,000 feet in 1 second did not have any seams or visible propulsion, that was indeed a craft from an exotic or unknown origin. And what David Grush was choking on his words on News Nation is the fact that some of these beings and craft, folks, as crazy as this sounds, are interdimensional. Let me give you an anecdotal story. I'm at a coffee shop. I'm being shown these photos of these beings. I said, "What is P55,000? What's P42,000? We have 42,000 aliens?" And the military person says, "No, that's not how many we have. P42,000 means that's a being from 42,000 years into the human lineage future." I'm like, can you unpack that for me? And I know you was unpack a lot. Can you explain that? He's like, John, aliens are not from our human lineage. They're from other galaxies, other planets, other star systems. When we call beings ETs, those are beings from the human lineage. Now, human lineage also has been transplanted on other solar systems and star systems and whatnot. And also, these beings, some of them are interdimensional. And this is being proven that travel interdimensionally is possible, is theoretically possible. So when this person was telling me that I'm looking at a photo of a being from 42,000 years into our future, you know, very disconcerting. It was mind-boggling to me. The
This is the
information that
meeting
I've
you had
that
at a
I've been given.
Starbucks?
It was a coffee shop. I'm not going to say the name. It was a coffee shop
Okay.
in Chicago. Yeah. Oh, I love meeting witnesses at coffee shops and restaurants. I love eating, as people can tell with my double chin. And Matthew, it breaks down it helps with the breakdown of formality and trust and whatnot. They can see how I treat a waitress. I can see how they treat a waitress. I can see their eyes, and when they're eating or drinking a cup of coffee, um, you can really wade somebody and do the sniff test and tell if they're telling you the truth or not. So yeah, I love meeting people at restaurants and coffee shops and diners and stuff.
Okay, so it's funny, the alien autopsy
Yeah,
video? I
yeah,
remember the girl I was dating when that came out, she ordered it for me. That was like one of my Christmas presents. I remember I actually had that on VHS,
right,
you know?
right.
So,
Can
um,
I can I just say one thing about that?
sure.
You know, first it's real, now it's a hoax, then it's real. I just want to tell people and show you my investigative prowess. I'm not bragging. I'm just something to think about. Two financially broke men in England put together that film. Okay, great. It was shot on 1947 Kodak film stock, 16 millimeter. And can someone explain how two broke people in London rented a World War II era hangar, uh, Air Force hangar, rented 5 Jeeps, made 6 bodies of aliens, had 15 people in period 1940s army attire and military police attire, along with 6 stretchers, and film that production on for the last 5 seconds of the alien autopsy. Don't believe me. I want your viewers to tell me if the alien autopsy is a total hoax. How could 2 people, again, it's just like my film. How can 2 broke guys, financially broke guys in London, have a $40,000 production where they're renting an airplane hangar with beings on stretchers and people in period clothes? Does that make any sense to anyone?
Well,
So
and
I
to
don't
build
know
one of those
about the
things.
alien autopsy, but I know about the last 5 seconds. And if you're going to tell me that that isn't a real shot from the 40s of 5 extraterrestrial humanoid looking beings being laid on the ground in front of an Air Force hangar, um, sorry. Sorry, I'm not
Yeah, I was
buying
gonna
it.
say,
I think that
even
that's totally real.
to be able to, create, the aliens, like, that's just not average. The average person doesn't have that equipment in their base, in their, in their
Right,
garage. Like, I mean,
right,
you have to pay somebody
right,
serious money to come up with those types of things.
right.
So, okay, is there anything else that we haven't gone over that you'd like to go over?
I just want to say in a recap, thank you sincerely for having me on your program. I thank you to your listeners. I know at times I seem exuberant, and people said I have crazy eyes at times. Hey, look, I'm excited that after 5 years, I'm done with this investigation, that I think that I've proved a really important cover up in human history. I'm excited that I can finally spend quality time with my wife and my daughters, and I'm excited to bring it to you. So I'm sorry for exuberance. And then people have said, well, he talks like he's been debriefed by the government. I have been debriefed by the government. Remember, military intelligence insiders, retired, came to me and debriefed me, read me into these programs. And this program, so we can be clear, the overall program to study all things aliens and the phenomenon from 1947 is majestic. The program at this facility where this film was shot is called Project Aquarius, and that is all things with aliens, the back engineering, reverse engineering of craft, the examination of biological tissue, the examination of beings, what they say, what they thought project, and their propulsion, their guidance systems, their life support systems, so on and so forth. That is called Project Aquarius. And so, take this, listen to the anecdotal stories. Don't so much focus on the film. Although when you do focus on it, zoom in. This creature shows emotion at the end. He almost looks exasperated when they're wiping the fluid from his mouth, and his lower lip does a curved down arch. That had to be hard animatronically to do back then and to do it instantaneously. And I offer people, do your own homework, do your own research. I sincerely thank you for listening to me, and we will solve this situation and this phenomenon. I truly think that this is going to bring the American people together. And if you want to use this as a TikTok clip, then let me say this, and I'm going to speak very clearly and not mince my words. I'm going to tell you something right now. When the underserved and the minority communities of this country finally start paying attention to the congressional hearings and realizing that $8 trillion of their money that could have been used for homeschooling, daycare, recreation centers, college education, transportation for single mothers and the elderly, um, help with medicine, intuition. When the underserved of this country, and I'm one of them, gets wind and starts paying attention that their government pilfered away $8 trillion to study tissue of aliens and reproduce alien craft, you are going to see some sort of a bloodless revolution take place in this country. And I want to tell the congressmen and subcontractors who have been lying about this, when that happens, they're not coming to my house. They're going to come to yours. And you remember what I'm saying here. And I am not threatening anyone. I am warning people in the government. Let's come clean now. Let's avoid the revolt. Thank you.
All right. I I was gonna say something that had kind of come out where it was like the idea of the shadow government, or the shadow, kind of that shadow body of the government that is hiding these things, or which is always funny to me, that the Pentagon, is always missing billions of dollars every year. That always kills me. Like, where does that money go? It's like, okay, well, then these things have to be funded. Where's the money coming from? Well, I mean, the government is the absolute worst with money. They're constantly losing money. I mean,
Horrible.
and I disagree, because here's why I know where that money is, because I have a friend that deposited two the COVID, the relief checks.
Sure.
He had somebody who came to him and gave him two fake 1,200, or I think it might be three fake $1,200 COVID checks.
Okay.
He deposited them in his bank account. They cleared, of course, because they were government checks. Now, they were fake. They were,
Right.
they were counterfeit. He got the money, and within a year, people from the government showed up and wanted to know that they knew exactly where the money had gone, that he'd gotten it, tracked it down. You're gonna spend probably $20,000-$30,000 on an investigation, another $50,000 for an investigation, and to house him in jail for
Right.
$3,600. You spent almost $100,000 to track down $3,600, which you'll probably never get back. But
Right.
you don't know where $1 billion went,
Right.
that went to the Pentagon.
Yeah.
That is
It's
all
the
electronic. They didn't
right.
bring it
No,
in
no, Matthew,
pallet.
they can't, they don't know where it went. It's just,
Yeah,
we don't
come
know
on,
what
like,
happened to $3 trillion.
something's wrong.
We're sorry.
Like,
It's
even if you were to say, "Hey, you know what? We cashed it all out and we used it as bribes." Well, then say that. We
right.
For other countries, we needed these people to vote this way,
Right.
on these committees in their country, so we could get a base
Right.
here. Oh, I'm good with that.
Yeah, me
You
too.
bribed some people in
Right.
India to get a base, or to get a contract. I'm okay with that.
Right.
T
Right.
Tell me.
Exactly. It's Donald Rumsfeld, a day before 9/11, the government, the Pentagon can't account for some $3 trillion. And a plane hits the Pentagon exactly in the accounting room where this counting error occurred. Hmm. No suspicion on that. Don't worry about
Coincidence.
it. Let's move on. Let's see what's on Wheel of Fortune tonight.
Right.
It's a joke. It's an insult. It's part of the wa- the what propelled me to keep going when people laughed at me, and people were ghosting me and maligning me. Um, you know, uh, i- if we can't have financial accountability to the people that pay the bills, you and I, and that's another thing that one military intelligence insider told me. He's like, Jon Stewart owns S4. Matthew Cox owns part of that B-52. We own the building. We own the chairs Congress sits on. You work for us. That's not a
Right.
cliche. You work for us. I go out and work my butt off in the automobile industry and in real estate and the stock market to pay taxes to pay for all of this. You work for me, you know, and now, uh, in a real, the Pentagon's smart. Now it's been said that all of this material, biological and craft and metals, is all with private contractors and corporations. Why? Because you can't FOIA them.
I
They
was gonna
have
say
a
there's
right to
not.
privacy. So
Yeah.
the generals are like, we're done. Oh, it's in with my buddies, and when I retire, I'm gonna go work for EG&G, Raytheon, and Boeing, and I have no problem with that. I have no problem with somebody going to get a job that you know uh, at EG&G, or Raytheon when they were. I have no problem with that. But let's keep everything on the up and up. And now let's come out and tell the people about this. But all of it's with corporations. You can't FOIA. Well done, boys. Well done. Gotta hand it to you.
Hey, I appreciate you guys watching both these interviews, and if you liked them, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified. Leave me a comment in the comment section. Also, please consider joining my Patreon. The link to the Patreon is in the description. And I really do appreciate you guys watching. Leave me a comment, share the video. Thank you very much. See ya.